This boy was seen as a loser by everyone at school, but one day, everything changed. He couldn't believe all the power he had now. His body was so strong that he was afraid he might go bald. He broke the record in the running test and did the same in the push-up exam. For the weightlifting test, there simply wasn't enough weight for him to use. All the students were watching, completely terrified. This was the boy they used to bully. He hadn't always been this strong. If only they had known, they would never have messed with him. But the truth is, things used to be very different. This boy was the only one who failed the advancement exam. While the whole class celebrated their success, Kannagi Minato felt an inexplicable emptiness. It was the third time he had failed. He was the student who stayed behind to clean the classroom. This lonely moment almost made him cry, realizing how useless he felt. One of his classmates said that all the students had to go to the school entrance. The reason was that a man named Isaac Kaise, a Class A hunter, had returned. He was once a student at this school before becoming a famous hunter. He was there to film a documentary about how he had been a great student before becoming famous. But the truth that wasn't shown to the cameras was this: Isaac Kaise was a horrible person who used to beat Minato every day for no reason. Remembering that guy made our protagonist tremble, but what Isaac Kaise told the cameras was that Minato was a great friend who always helped him when they studied together, even with money, since Minato's family was poor. Those lies were only meant to make Kaise look even better on camera. And since Minato didn't have the courage to speak up, he simply agreed with Isaac's words. While the reporters took pictures, Minato felt those memories burn in his mind. He truly hated that man. After the filming ended, our protagonist felt the emptiness of being weak, of not having the power to do anything. When he was younger, Minato loved reading books that told stories about the legendary founders who saved the world. When the Tower of Malevolence appeared and nearly destroyed humanity with the monsters that came out of it, incredible people rose up and saved the world. They were all amazing. One man defeated 10,000 soldiers using only a wooden stick. It could easily have been just a pencil. There was also a mage so powerful that she could cast spells without saying a single. Fortunately, classmate and said he would convince the association to let Minato retake the test. He told him to meet at the Founders' Sanctuary later. That left the protagonist confused. The guy was awful, but if he was doing this just to improve his public image, it didn't matter. As long as Minato got a second chance, he would take it. Later at the Founders' Mausoleum, the cameras were recording the final scene. The filming focused on Isaac standing before the historic tomb, giving a grand speech. After the interview ended, the reporters thanked him, satisfied with the footage they had captured. Isaac acted like a polite celebrity, saying he couldn't wait to see the article. He asked. They eagerly pointed to a hidden passage, asking if that was what he was looking for. Suddenly, a voice called from behind. When Minato arrived, expecting to retake the exam, he saw what they were doing to him. This was a sacred place, the resting place of the people he admired most. When he tried to stop the damned looters, Isaac Kaise struck him with all the power of an A-class awakened being. The punch was brutal. Minato felt many things inside him break. The men shouted that they had taken everything valuable, everything that was inside. Minato felt like he was about to die, and yet all he could think about was how wrong it all was. They couldn't steal that. Isaac Kaise then grabbed Minato and said he knew everything about him, the weakest student obsessed with the ancestors who spent all his time in the library reading books. His perfect plan was to throw Minato into the river behind the sanctuary and make it look like he was the one who had desecrated the founder's tomb. The blow Minato received earlier was meant to kill him. When he was thrown into the water, he had no strength left. As he sank, he remembered how he used to train every day and study hard to achieve his dream, all in vain. Then at the bottom of the lake, lights began to glow around him. Despite the cold water, a comforting warmth emanated from them. Minato heard voices speaking about him being the vessel for this generation. The heroic spirits had been sealed in that place. In Minato's hand was the emblem of nothing. It did not grant its bearer any power. However, whoever possessed it could inherit the spirit of any founder. Minato had to choose which of the heroes he would form a contract with. Magic, endurance, swordsmanship, spear mastery, any of them. The protagonist then shouted that he chose all of them. He wanted all the powers. The heroes said it didn't work that way, but all of them were suddenly absorbed into the mark. Every soul was pulled inside the seal. Rusaki and his thieving friends were still near the lake when they heard the sound of an explosion in the water. By some miracle, one of the men had an umbrella. The three couldn't believe what they were seeing. The boy floating in front of them was Minato, the loser who had just died. When the protagonist landed in front of them, his expression was completely different, yet they still mocked him, saying that not even cockroaches were as resilient as he was. A stick on the ground seemed interesting to the protagonist. The two men laughed at him. "Are you going to fight? Do you think you're John Wick?" Minato wasn't intimidated and continued testing his movements. Then Risaki said in a serious tone, "Make sure he never comes out of the bottom of that lake again." One of the men drew his sword, promising to throw Minato back into the water. When the man attacked for real, he swung several times per second. Minato couldn't even see the strikes. He only felt the moment his opponent's body began to fall apart. Risaki and the fat man stood in disbelief at the scene before them. This couldn't be the same loser as before. The fat man unleashed his most powerful spell. Minato was known for having no mana, so he should have been destroyed instantly. But the protagonist simply pointed his finger, and without saying a word, a lightning bolt struck the spot. It wasn't hard to hit. The target was so large. Even so, Risaki was stunned. That was definitely magic cast without an incantation. The sword movement looked as if the holy swordsman himself was standing there. The spell resembled one used by the legendary mage. What Risaki couldn't understand was that all Hunter's 6 founders were now inside Minato. The protagonist declared that a new name would be written in history, and that Risaki would also be remembered, but as the first 1% of evil to be eliminated by the great Kannagi. As he approached, Risaki could only stare in horror, finally accepting the impossible truth. The boy he had discarded had just absorbed the souls of the founders through the emblem of the void. Inside Kannagi's mind, the founders were going wild. After centuries of being sealed, they were enjoying their newfound freedom, already arguing over who would take control of the new body first. Amid the chaos, the legendary swordsman Hanuki Heitiru spoke to Kannagi, casually remarking that he wasn't surprised the boy remembered his name. He asked Kannagi what his plan was, ignoring Risaki completely and pointing his attention toward a far greater threat right behind him. Focused, Kannagi turned to face Risaki, who was trembling with fear, trying to brag about being an A-rank hunter. Kannagi didn't waste a word. He threw a single punch that sent Risaki flying. Kannagi then shifted his focus to the mysterious bag, which radiated a dark aura. As he stared at it, a massive surge of power erupted from within, catching him off guard. Hanuki, however, simply watched calmly, a faint smile on his face. Meanwhile, back in the city, a monstrous 3-headed wolf was rampaging. A man shouted for someone named Kisarage to handle it. Without hesitation, Kisarage leapt into action. With incredible grace, he jumped onto the beast and brought his sword down in a cascading strike, defeating the A-rank monster with a single blow. The crowd went wild, cheering for the S-rank hunter. Kisarage humbly thanked them before asking where Risaki was. One of the men replied that Risaki was probably busy with an interview, commenting on how nice it must be to be called the young prodigy. Kisarage simply shrugged, noting that Risaki's fame was good for their guild's reputation. But as they were about to leave, a wave of terrifying pressure spread throughout the city. Panic erupted as civilians and even low-ranked hunters fainted. Kisarage turned to see his own comrades struggling, realizing that even A and B-rank hunters couldn't withstand the pressure. He instantly knew that an S-class monster had appeared. The immense power was emanating from the founder's mausoleum. Back in the forest, a terrified Risaki struggled to stand, staring in horror as a colossal monster crawled out of the bag. He stammered, "Is that a demon? What is that thing?" Kannagi explained that by stealing the relics, Risaki had broken the seal that held one of the original boss monsters from the tower. Inside Kannagi's mind, Hinuki analyzed the beast with an expert's eye. He immediately recognized it as the embodiment of the void, a creature far beyond Sit's class. According to him, even its poisonous aura could kill thousands, and monsters like that were common in his time. It was too much for Risaki. He completely lost control and ran away, convinced that staying another second meant certain death. But Kannagi knew the instincts of a predator. He warned that running would only get him killed faster, but it was already too late. The moment Risaki moved, the monster attacked with terrifying speed, launching a massive tentacle straight at him. He barely managed to raise his sword before the tentacle pierced through his body. His chest was pierced. The same sword that once killed a dragon was now completely useless. The creature's tentacles spread across Risaki's body, draining his life force as his screams echoed through the forest. Kannagi, however, only watched, knowing this was inevitable. As the former hero died, the spirit of Hinoki placed a hand on Kannagi's shoulder. "Want to see my one-handed sword style?" he asked, attempting to take full control. The new and powerful body, but it was Kannagi himself who stopped the argument. He set his own terms. No single founder would have control. His body would be shared among all of them. He declared that one day he would surpass each of them and prove his worth through strength. If they wanted to use his body, they would have to show him what true power was. Shocked by his sheer audacity, Hinoki only smiled and readied his blade. Seizing the moment, Hinoki took the first step, merging his consciousness with Kannagi's and urging the others to follow. When Hinoki's spirit raised his sword, Kannagi's body mirrored the movement, striking at the monster's limbs. Guided by the skill of one of the founders, the blade sliced off one massive arm with a single clean cut. The beast retaliated with a furious strike, but Kannagi's body, now infused with another founder's agility, dodged with superhuman speed. Power continued to build as the spirits took turns, one granting him the strength to grab the creature's tentacles and slam it violently into the ground. The monster staggered as Kannagi grabbed a bow, piercing its hide with arrows. He then unleashed a barrage of abilities: whirlwinds, fire breath, and ice attacks. When the beast tried a sneak attack from below, Kannagi's eyes glowed yellow. The great mage within him took control, electrocuting the creature with lightning. Then, with one final powerful leap, Kannagi soared above the monster. Hinoki took control, grabbed Risaki's broken sword, and executed his signature one-handed technique, the wave-cutting blade of Kuretake. The sword sliced the demon clean in half, ending its fury. As the two halves fell, a victorious smile finally spread across Kannagi's face. Watching the entire battle from a nearby tree was a single crow. Elsewhere in the city, a man standing atop a skyscraper answered a phone call. Shocked, he heard that the monster had been defeated before he even arrived. He asked if any strong hunters had been at the scene, but the voice on the other end said that footage from the crow showed it was a student from the academy who had taken the monster down. The man, Tiara Midori, the strongest awakened being in the world, said he wanted to meet the student. The next morning, Midori sat atop a pile of monster corpses while calling the academy's director. He told him about the sex-class monster incident, clarifying that he wasn't the one who defeated it. According to the crow's footage, it was Kannagi Minato. Midori found it hard to believe, especially since Kannagi was known for failing the hunter exam 3 years in a row. He then asked the director for a special favor. Back at the academy, all the students were talking about what had happened. The terrifying aura from the previous day had left most of them paralyzed, and now everyone was trying to guess who could have defeated such a monster. Meanwhile, Kannagi staggered across the campus, leaning on a staff, his whole body trembling. He overheard their conversations, surprised that the incident had already become the school's hottest topic. Suddenly, a guy bumped into him, knocking him down and mocking the idea that a weakling like him could ever be an S-class killer. Kannagi knew the truth. He had defeated the demon, but only by letting the founders use his body. Now he was paying the price. The backlash from their power was agonizing. As he struggled to stand, a voice mocked him in his mind. It was Hinoki. reminding him of his bold promise to surpass them. His tone was challenging yet encouraging, pushing Kannagi to pull himself together. Remembering his vow, Kannagi ignored the pain and forced himself to stand again, silently reaffirming his goal. Hinoki laughed within him, urging him to show some determination. The spirit then examined the nearby students with a sigh of disappointment. The awakened ones of this era didn't seem any stronger than ordinary humans, far from the warriors of his time. He reflected that if the tower were to reappear now, the world would be doomed. But his thoughts were interrupted when he sensed an incredibly powerful aura nearby. Kannagi noticed Hinoki's sudden tension, but the spirit brushed it off. At that moment, a teacher shouted for Kannagi to come over. Assuming it was about his expulsion letter, he approached cautiously. After all, he had failed 3 times and had no more chances left. But to his complete shock, the teacher told him to go to the field for a re-evaluation. The news left Kannagi frozen. Other students crowded around the windows, whispering excitedly. No one has ever gotten a hunter re-evaluation before. On the field, Kannagi took a battle stance. The corridor falls silent. Kannagi is not fully recovered, but he is determined. The first test is a 100-meter sprint. The student who had knocked as Kannagi crosses the finish line in just 1.2 seconds, breaking the previous record of 2.7 seconds. Next is the 3,000-meter run, which he completes in 1 minute and 17 seconds, shattering the old record. It's the same story for every other test, push-ups, bench presses, or anything else. He doesn't just break the records, he more than doubles them. The students are completely speechless. Even Kannagi wonders if the founders are secretly helping him, but Hinoki assures him that it's all him. Meanwhile, in the director's office, Midori is reviewing Kannagi's file. The director admits that although Kannagi's new physical scores are unbelievable, his real problem has always been his magic. For 3 years, every evaluation indicated his mana levels were 0, completely undetectable. That's why he was always considered a lost cause. Midori's secretary just smiles faintly, hinting that things are about to get interesting. Back on the field, Kannagi faces the final test, the magic measurement. The instructor explains that he needs to channel his mana into a large fan and make it spin for 30 seconds. The current record is 402 rotations. As Kannagi prepares, memories of failing this exact test year after year flood back. No matter how much effort he put in before, the fan had never even trembled under his attempts. His inability to feel mana had always held him back, but this time, it's different. For the first time, he can sense it flowing through him, originating from his right foot, spiraling through his body and returning once more. He realizes that his breathing can regulate and accelerate the flow, allowing him to release the energy through his right palm. When the teacher signals the start of the test, Kannagi releases his mana. Instantly, the fan begins to spin at a breathtaking speed. The counter struggles to record the rapid acceleration as the force of the wind makes it difficult for the observers to even see the numbers. The speed continues to rise far beyond expectations, and before anyone can react, the machine explodes. The fan, now completely detached, shoots across the field like a blade. Students scream in panic as the object hurtles toward the main building, crashing directly into the director's office with a deafening impact. Inside, the director barely escapes the incoming debris, collapsing in shock at what just happened. Midori's secretary, stunned by the spectacle, can hardly process what she's seen. Midori, however, remains calm and simply laughs. To him, the resemblance between Kannagi's abilities and his own is undeniable. According to Midori, there has only ever been one person before Kannagi to produce an immeasurable score himself. The professor, still trying to make sense of what he has just witnessed, finally declares that Kannagi has passed the hunter exam. A wave of excitement rushes through the students as they erupt in applause. Kannagi hasn't just broken every record, he has surpassed every expectation. Looking down at his own hands, Kannagi trembles in disbelief. He had spent years believing he was incapable of using magic, yet the power had been within him all along. From afar, Hinoki watches the scene with quiet satisfaction, having anticipated this outcome. Kannagi now knows that everything has changed. By entrusting his body to the founders, he has unlocked the dormant potential that had been hidden within him all this time. Kanoki can't help but laugh, commenting inwardly that the one standing before him is far from ordinary. With the emblem of nothing marking his destiny, it's as if he had been waiting for this very moment for over a century. Before Kannagi can think further, an overwhelming presence descends upon the field, sending a shockwave through the air. The sheer force of it leaves him momentarily speechless. His mind struggles to comprehend the explosion of energy, but Hinoki immediately recognizes the tremendous aura, the same one he sensed that morning. Standing before them, seemingly materializing from pure pressure, is the legendary Midori himself. When Kannagi sees him, he is stunned, for Midori is the strongest hunter in existence. As Midori lands, he walks straight toward Kannagi. He acknowledges Kannagi's achievements in the hunter exam, offering words of recognition, but Kannagi can barely respond. Midori then presents him with a new challenge, an additional test. He wants Kannagi to land a single hit on him, the strongest hunter in the world. Hearing this, Kannagi freezes in shock for a moment. Midori, only 23 years old, had earned the title of full-fledged hunter at the age of 9. His feats are legendary and unmatched throughout history. He has turned thousands of demons to ash, and his power is so overwhelming that even other hunters dare not face him. 10 years ago, he single-handedly eradicated the Pandemonium outbreak 10 years ago and the Kyokuso outbreak 5 years earlier. Both were contained by him. He is a living singularity. As Midori explains his challenge, Kannagi stands in disbelief. However, Kannagi is thrilled, urging Kannagi to hand over his body immediately. Still, Midori explains the conditions in the simplest possible terms. Kannagi has 1 minute to attack him. Whether he succeeds or fails, there will be no consequences. Midori will only counterattack once every 10 seconds, ensuring the challenge remains fair. There is no need for hesitation or doubt. Any ability, any weapon is allowed for Kannagi, while Midori will refrain from using his own powers. To prove his sincerity, Midori summons a vast arsenal of weapons, offering them to Kannagi. The sight of so many legendary weapons appearing in an instant only adds to the surreal nature of the challenge. Confusion clouds Kannagi's thoughts. Realizing he is about to fight the famous Midori in a one-on-one battle, still uncertain, he hesitates before finally asking if he is truly free to use any weapon. In response, Midori casually picks up a katana, holding it lightly but firmly. With effortless precision, he slices the blade in half, as if it were nothing more than a fragile twig. He declares without the slightest hint of arrogance that his body surpasses the sharpness of any blade. Kannagi barely has time to process this demonstration before Hinoki's impatience flares up. Frustration boils in his voice as he demands control. Unable to tolerate Midori's overwhelming confidence, his anger surges as he declares that Midori's words are unforgivable. Kannagi can feel Hinoki's energy swelling, his presence amplifying as if ready to unleash his full strength. At that moment, Kannagi realizes that Midori's power is comparable to that of the founders themselves. Against such strength, he knows he doesn't stand a real chance, yet there's no time to hesitate. Meanwhile, all the students have gathered to witness the fight. Without warning, Midori begins the countdown. A faint smile curves on his lips as he signals the start of the test. Kannagi grips his sword and charges toward Midori, determined to strike. Hinoki questions whether Kannagi truly intends to fight alone, insisting that it isn't fair, but Kannagi ignores him and continues his assault. Even though he knows his efforts are futile, he believes that to become a legend he must rely on his own strength. Instead of borrowing power from the founders, he swings his sword at Midori, but Midori dodges effortlessly with the smallest of movements. Even as Kannagi attacks relentlessly, Midori remains nonchalant, still speaking on his phone, casually asking which social media platform Kannagi uses and remarking that the incident will surely be recorded and go viral. The students watch in disbelief, astonished that Midori can evade every strike without taking the fight seriously. Yet as Kannagi continues his relentless assault, one student notices something strange about his movements. Observing closely, they see Kannagi raise his sword, feinting a vertical strike before swiftly switching to a horizontal slash aimed at Midori's feet and throat. The execution is flawless, and Kannagi is amazed at how naturally his body moves. Realizing that he isn't tiring, he wonders if this is the effect of surrendering to the founder's power. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted when Midori places a single finger on his forehead, preparing to flick him, and casually mentions that 10 seconds have already passed. Kannagi barely dodges, but the released force obliterates the entire field. Seeing the destruction, Kannagi realizes that if that flick had connected, his head would have been gone. Midori looks at his own hand in mild confusion, sensing no malice from Kannagi, and wonders if he miscalculated his strength. Panic sets in for Kannagi as he realizes he'll die at this rate. Desperately, he tries to recall the sensation of his strongest self. As he concentrates, a powerful aura erupts from him, catching Midori off guard. Kannagi launches another attack, his speed rising rapidly. The students are awestruck, shouting that the cameras can't even keep up with his movements. Midori senses the shift in Kannagi's presence and wonders whether there's a specific condition for activating this power, or if Kannagi's deliberately hiding it. Realizing that another 10 seconds have passed, Midori decides to attack lightly this time. He crouches, positioning his finger for another flick, but instead he taps Kannagi's chest, sending him flying backward and crashing into the wall with immense force. Kannagi coughs up blood, yet he finds the experience exhilarating, amazed that he's fighting the strongest awakened being in the world. He understands that if his body were the same as it was yesterday, he would already be dead from that blow. The realization makes him smile, knowing it means he's getting stronger. However, he also recognizes that his current ability is still not enough to pass Midori's test. Determined, he chooses to push forward with brute strength and charges at Midori once more. Suddenly, Midori appears right beside him, moving with unimaginable speed. The speed is unbelievable, making Kannagi stop in his tracks. Apologizing, Midori says he has seen enough. He then states that the 30 seconds are over before striking Kannagi on the back of the neck, causing him to slowly lose consciousness. As Kannagi collapses, Midori remarks that he truly is a genius, though not yet on the same level as his peers. In the end, Kannagi fails to fully release the power that Midori had sensed within him. Calling his secretary, Midori tells her they should head back, expressing mild disappointment with the outcome. At that moment, however, Kannagi grabs his sword and Midori instantly feels a surge of intense energy behind him. Midori turns to see Kannagi's body radiating power. Hinoki, now speaking through Kannagi, comments that the stubborn boy has finally fallen asleep, allowing him to take control. Stepping forward, Hinoki suggests they extend the fight a little longer. Meanwhile, Kannagi's spirit, now separated from his body, panics as he watches Hinoki take over, but Midori only smiles, recognizing the presence he had sensed earlier. He wonders whether it's an entirely different person or simply an ability at work. Either way, he understands one thing: Kannagi has become a monster. Under Hinoki's control, Kannagi suddenly launches an attack, shouting at Midori not to get distracted. Midori immediately notices that his movements have changed. His speed and strength have reached an entirely new level. Suddenly, a sword slashes toward Midori's face and he ducks just in time to avoid it. Kannagi swings again, forcing Midori to leap backward and create distance. Still in shock, Midori watches as Kannagi quickly positions his sword for another strike. He swings once more, but Midori dodges just in time, causing the attack to hit the building behind him. The students inside the structure panic as they realize the danger. Midori observes that Kannagi's attacks have become unpredictable, though he can still anticipate the rhythm of his movements. It reminds him of ancient swordsmanship, a relentless torrent of flowing strikes. Raising his palm, Midori laughs and comments that such skill is indeed necessary to defeat someone of Sench rank like himself. He then lifts his hand again, intending to put Kannagi to sleep once more, noting that only 40 seconds have passed. However, Kannagi suddenly charges forward at incredible speed, swinging his sword and shouting that Midori won't be able to hit him. Midori quickly jumps back to evade the strike, laughing as he acknowledges Kannagi's impressive skill. The students can hardly believe what they are witnessing. Midori is on the defensive. Kannagi yells that Midori is boring and insists that he shouldn't hold back. He warns Midori that if he underestimates him, he'll regret it. Without hesitation, Kannagi lunges again, but Midori just laughs and accepts the challenge. With a quick kick, Midori sends a small stone flying toward the pile of weapons behind him. Instantly, the weapons rise into the air. He leaps upward, catching Kannagi off guard and grabs one of the hovering weapons. Excited, Kannagi exclaims that Midori is finally going all out. They then engage in an intense aerial battle, clashing foot against foot and astonishing the students watching below. They grab every weapon within reach, shattering them into pieces with sheer force. Meanwhile, inside Kannagi's body, the founders observe Hinoki unleashing his full power. They're impressed that Midori can keep up. The spirit of the old warrior suggests joining the fight, but another founder scolds him for being disrespectful. The great mage, silently observing, suddenly notices that Kannagi is studying Hinoki's movements, trying to learn from them. He sees Hinoki shifting his center of gravity when leaping from below, but the sword in his hands breaks again. Frustrated by the weapon's poor quality, Hinoki feels a surge of anger. Midori, on the other hand, finds the fight exhilarating and fun. However, he soon realizes that there are no swords left and wonders if Kannagi will resort to firearms. With a teasing grin, Midori shouts that only 10 seconds remain and mockingly asks what Hinoki plans to do. Straight for the student who had pushed Kannagi earlier and seizes his sword. At that moment, Midori swiftly approaches, launching his fist toward Hinoki. The impact causes a loud explosion against the building. Fortunately, Hinoki dodges just in time and reappears in front of Midori. They resume their aerial duel, exchanging blows mid-air. Midori laughs, saying the fight is fun and suggesting they continue a little longer. Meanwhile, the students realize that the building is about to collapse. As the battle reaches the rooftop, Midori's secretary watches indifferently. Midori then places his hand on a massive fan and grips it tightly, causing cracks to form along its surface. He rips the fan from the building and aims it at Hinoki. With a powerful throw, he hurls it toward him. However, Midori is caught off guard when Hinoki, wielding his sword in one hand, slices the fan apart effortlessly. Using his one-handed sword style, the fan shatters into countless fragments, scattering through the air like glittering dust. Midori reacts with excitement, praising Hinoki's skill. However, Hinoki wastes no time and throws his sword at Midori. To his shock, the sword shatters upon impact. Midori raises his hand, aims at him, and calmly acknowledges that 60 seconds have passed before striking Hinoki and sending him crashing down. Hinoki curses under his breath, but before he can react, Kannagi appears behind him and pushes him back toward the other founders. As Midori's attack approaches, Kannagi manages to deflect it with a smooth motion, successfully dodging the blow. The unexpected maneuver leaves both Hinoki and Midori stunned. However, the impact breaks one of Kannagi's hands. Despite the pain, appears to be a small outcome, much like a game of chess where both players possess equal skill. Despite its intensity, Hinoki knows it lasted only a brief moment. Watching in silent pride, he realizes that Kannagi has opened a new path toward victory. Kannagi, however, is shocked to see Midori stop his punch in time. Frustration fills him as he realizes he didn't land a clean hit. But then, to his surprise, Midori smiles and deliberately pulls Kannagi's fist toward his own face. Before anyone can react, both of them collapse to the ground. The students watching the battle murmur in confusion, struggling to comprehend what just happened. Midori, still holding Kannagi's unconscious body, calls his secretary Rin and informs her that it's time to leave. Rin arrives beside him and asks about the result. Midori confirms that Kannagi passed and admits that he finds him interesting. However, he also realizes that he accidentally broke Kannagi's arm and asks Rin to heal him. She agrees without hesitation. The students who overhear the conversation can hardly believe that Kannagi succeeded. The realization quickly spreads and cheers erupt throughout the area as they celebrate Kannagi's victory. He managed Bays, thanking her, and she congratulates him for passing the test. Still in disbelief, Kannagi abruptly sits up, wondering if he truly managed to hit Midori. Before he can process the thought further, Midori suddenly appears beside him, amused by his reaction. Without lingering on the moment, Midori states that a pass is a pass. He admits that he took the battle seriously, especially during his consecutive attacks. Midori continues to praise Kannagi's skill, his ability to dodge Midori's strongest strike and his impressive movements. He encourages Kannagi to take pride in his accomplishment. Regaining his composure, Kannagi accepts the compliment. Without hesitation, he focuses on the next step, eager to know what comes after passing. His question momentarily confuses Rin, who turns to Midori for an answer, equally unsure. Later that night, Kannagi was at home helping his mother clean while she cooked in the kitchen. She casually asked how many guests would be coming. Kannagi wasn't sure, so he just guessed one. His mother then reflected on the day, saying it had been a great event. Not only had Kannagi passed the hunter exam, but he had also caught Midori's attention. She told him she was confident in his abilities, believing he could achieve anything as long as he worked hard enough. Kannagi listened quietly, appreciating her words, but then his mother's expression changed. She looked worried about someone so famous visiting their home, joking that people might mistake their house for a dog kennel. Exasperated, Kannagi quickly dismissed the idea, insisting that Midori wasn't the type to judge such things. After finishing his chores and helping his mother, Kannagi finally collapsed onto his bed, but his mind was still stuck on the day's events. His eyes drifted to the card Midori had given him, and he felt a wave of uncertainty. He wondered why Midori hadn't thought more carefully about the situation. His mind went back to the battlefield that morning, remembering when Rin had knocked Midori down and twisted his leg. He could still recall Midori's cry of pain as Rin confronted him. At that moment, Midori reminded Kannagi of something he had said earlier, that Kannagi had agreed to become one of his companions if they won. Confused, Kannagi denied ever saying such a thing. Rin, growing irritated, twisted Midori's leg even harder. Midori told Kannagi that too many people were watching and suggested that he come to his house that night to discuss everything calmly. He promised to explain their choices and reveal their true enemies. Kannagi wondered who those enemies could be. He knew the founders had already destroyed the tower, and that current hunters were tasked with eliminating monsters that escaped from the dimensional rift. He questioned whether there might be another reason, but before he could think any further, he drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, Hina and what was wrong decided who would take over his body. Before Rina could answer, the doorbell rang. Apologizing, Kannagi guessed it might be Midori and suggested they continue the conversation later. He went to the door. It was dark. Panic flooded him. He called out to her and ran forward, but stopped abruptly when he noticed someone sitting in the kitchen. The stranger was calmly eating the food his mother had prepared, even complimenting the taste, all while ignoring the huge mess around him. In a mocking tone, the man told Kannagi that he should discipline his mother. He even added that if Kannagi wanted to impress guests, they would need to get better quality food. Kannagi immediately demanded to know who he was and what he had done to his mother. The man didn't even flinch. Instead, he scolded Kannagi for raising his voice. Then he introduced himself as Heitani Goru, an S-rank hunter and a colleague of Midori. Heitani then ordered Kannagi to grab his things, saying they were moving to their base. Rage boiled inside Kannagi. Without a second thought, he threw a punch at Heitani, but Heitani effortlessly dodged and suddenly appeared behind him, asking if Kannagi was trying to challenge him. Kannagi stayed silent, remembering his mother's words. She had promised to raise him proudly on her own after his father's death. He recalled her worn-out shoes that she still insisted on favorite tonkatsu for dinner. With renewed determination, Kannagi glared at Heitani and demanded to know what he had done to his mother. Watching everything unfold, Hinok realized that Haitani was an S-rank hunter from a previous era. Hinok was furious at this man, thinking he was just another imitation of Midori, and decided it was time to step in. The founders who had seen Kannagi fight Midori now understood how they should treat him from now on. Haitani, amused, only mocked Kannagi, saying his angry expression was actually quite cute. He raised his hand to slap Kannagi, but Kannagi remained perfectly still, completely unfazed. Just as the strike was about to land, Kannagi caught Haitani's hand effortlessly, and with surprising ease twisted it. The eldest founder was stunned. He recognized that technique from ancient battles against monsters. Suddenly, Haitani was hurled through the window, crashing through the garden wall, but he landed on his feet before even touching the ground. Regaining his stance, Haitani returned, trying to understand what had just happened. He wondered if what he had seen was Aikido. He recalled Kanaga's fight with Midori earlier that day. He had noticed Kannaga's immense aura and swordsmanship, but also a strange and unique power. Haitani acknowledged his resilience, remarking that Kannagi was even tougher than Risak. Kannaga's patience was wearing thin. He demanded an answer, pressing Haitani to tell him what he had done to his mother, who was still inside, writhing in pain as poison spread through her body. Haitani just laughed. He sarcastically pointed out that Kannagi didn't seem to understand what was happening. Then, with a grin, he finally told the truth. His mother had been in the way, so he put her to sleep with poison. Haitani smiled, adding that if she was lucky, she would only suffer minor side effects. He remained calm as Kannagi stared at him in disbelief. Then Kannagi asked why they would hurt the family of someone who might become their ally. Haitani only laughed at the word ally. He suddenly appeared behind Kannagi, ready to strike. Kannagi rarely managed to dodge the attack, but Haitani's relentless assault continued. As he attacked, Haitani declared that he would never be Kanaga's comrade. He was just a puppet following orders. He mocked Kannagi, saying that when his loved ones became hostages, he would have no choice but to obey. He called him naive. Before Kannagi could react, Haitani stomped on his foot and slashed him, asking sarcastically if he had been right. Kannagi quickly pulled back, feeling a burning pain on his cheek. When he touched his face, he realized the poison was already spreading. Haitani smirked, raising his fingers now covered in sharp, needle-like spikes coated with venom. He taunted Kannagi, saying the poison was already in his system. He then revealed that he could produce dozens of different toxins from his body, which he called the phantom insect venom's deadly vision. Haitani sighed, complaining about how inconvenient this mission was. He said that if he wanted, he could release a deadly toxic gas over a 5-kilometer radius, but doing so in the middle of the city wasn't an option. He then stated that the poison would kill Kannagi within a minute, unless he agreed to join their organization. If he accepted, Haitani would give him the antidote, otherwise he would die. Kanaga's mind raced as he realized just how lethal the toxin truly was. Haitani knew it would be an inevitable death sentence for any normal person. Looking at his hand, Kannagi called out to Valentine, the goddess of medicine, asking if she was within him. The founders turned to Valentine, who looked both confused and surprised. He apologized for summoning her so suddenly and asked if she could teach him how to neutralize the poison later. She hesitantly agreed. Irritated, Haitani released another wave of venom at him, shouting angrily and demanding to know what kind of nonsense Kannagi was muttering. Kannagi swiftly dodged the attack. Then he explained that the Aikido movement he had used earlier came from Kurudama, the god of hands. The old founder within him was astonished, realizing that Kannagi had managed to copy the move after seeing it only once. Next, Kannagi summoned Hinok, the exterminator of the army of 10,000, Shimmer Cox, the blue spear of destruction, and Margit, the celestial bow. He declared that he had studied and memorized all of them from the ancient records. He told Haitani that the founders Haitani once admired were now within him. This left Haitani completely dumbfounded, but instead of being afraid, he became furious. He shouted that he would show Kannagi what true pain was. Haitani then lunged at him, his needle-covered hands ready to strike. Kannagi leapt aside just in time, avoiding the blow. Haitani's strike hit a nearby tree, which withered and died instantly. Without hesitation, Haitani launched another attack, yelling that if Kannagi kneeled and begged, he might get an antidote to lessen the pain. He warned that once the agony consumed him, his mind would never return to normal, he would be lost to madness, but Kannagi remained silent, calmly waiting as Haitani's hand drew near. Just as Haitani reached him, Kannagi swiftly slid to the side. He pressed his palm against Haitani's chest and activated Santok's fist. Haitani coughed up blood from the shockwave that reverberated inside him. The force sent him crashing into a lamppost. Without hesitation, Kannagi followed up with a kick powered by Asun's feet of light, sending Haitani flying a great distance. Asun within him was stunned by the power, but Haitani still managed to stand, recovering quickly. In an instant, Kannagi was in front of him again, striking with both hands. He dodged Haitani's counterattack, shattering several of his poisonous needles. Then he used the sharp beak assault of Corral, hitting Haitani in the stomach. Kannagi followed with Ran's dragon claw, slashing across Haitani's chest, surprising even Ran, who resided within him. Haitani grabbed him, but Kannagi immediately activated Lilak's flipper, launching Haitani high into the air. As he floated, Haitani was filled with disbelief. He knew the poison should have clouded Kannagi's judgment and already affected his nervous system, yet Kannagi was still moving strong and unharmed. Kannagi then summoned the Mage of Truth, Meotes Salantes Deus, and cast it upon Haitani. A massive burst of energy erupted, shocking everyone present. Hinoki turned to the founders, asking if they had seen that. He told them that right after defeating Haitani, Kannagi began copying all of his movements, both physical and magical. Hinoki added that he didn't care if Kannagi's power came from the emblem of the void. He simply found it fascinating. The founders agreed. Hinoki then suggested that they train Kannagi, convinced that if they did, he would become the strongest awakened being in existence. Meanwhile, elsewhere, hooded figures were leaping and sprinting across rooftops. One of them shouted for the others to hurry. He revealed that the guilds of Nebura were after Kannagi, so they had to move fast and capture him before Nebura's people did. Suddenly Midori appeared right behind him. "There are really that many of you?" Midori asked calmly. The man froze in shock, but Midori continued, saying, "If there were 15, you must be the last one." Midori pointed a finger near the man's forehead, twisted his head slightly, and slammed him hard into the rooftop. He then contacted Rin using his raven's call. She answered immediately, saying she had arrived. She assured him there were no awakened nearby, but her next words truly surprised him. "Someone has already been here," Rin said. Midori remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Rin then explained that the intruder was Haitani, an S-rank hunter famous for his mastery of poisons. He had come looking for Kannagi but was completely defeated. Midori's eyes drifted to the rooftop, where Haitani lay sprawled out, mouth slightly open. The sight made Midori wonder what exactly had happened. Shortly after they arrived at Kannagi's house, Midori clasped his hands together, a bright smile spreading across his face as he praised Kannagi. He genuinely admired him, saying he never expected Kannagi to defeat Haitani. Without hesitation, he asked, "Were you exposed to the poison?" Kannagi scratched his cheek, giving a shy little answer. "Both my mother and I are fine." Rin, unimpressed, crossed her arms. She reminded Kannagi, "You wouldn't have survived the night without Valentine's help." The moment her name was mentioned, Valentine let out an audible groan. Exhausted but smiling faintly, Valentine quickly recognized her own efficient work, noting that finishing everything in just 5 seconds wasn't an easy task. She merely shrugged, murmuring that it wasn't difficult at all. Since the creator of the poison was right there, all it took were a few pricks to collect the necessary blood samples and find the antidote. Kannagi was still trying to process everything, but he finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Was Haitani lying when he said he was Midori's comrade? Midori nodded immediately, confirming it was a lie. He added that many people use his name for their own benefit. With that cleared up, he turned back to Rin and asked if she was finished. As soon as he did, she appeared beside him and nodded, saying that all the damage had been repaired. Kannagi's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked back at his house and sure enough, the window and the garden wall looked completely restored. With a bright smile, Midori suggested that they go inside to discuss Kannagi's future. Kannagi just stood there, frozen, feeling a mix of excitement and unease wash over him. The next day, a car was waiting for Kannagi and his mother saw him off at the gate. She reminded him to check if he had forgotten anything, but Kannagi assured her everything was fine and that she worried too much. She couldn't believe that the child she had raised was now heading to Midori's home. Midori had already promised Kannagi's mother that he would take care of him and turn him into a great hunter. Hearing that made Kannagi thrilled, but his mother still felt a bit anxious. Hiding her worry, she handed Kannagi his lunchbox, telling him to eat since he had skipped breakfast. Even though he didn't really need to, Kannagi accepted it without argument. Then his mother asked Midori directly if her son would be in danger. Midori immediately confirmed that he would. His mother then confessed that she had always struggled until now, and trust her son to Midori was a huge step for her. Still, as a mother, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. Sounding confident, Midori promised her that he would train Kannagi until he had no weaknesses left. Hearing that, she finally agreed to let Kannagi go with him. Once in the car, Ren, who was driving, glanced at Midori and asked if it was really right to make such a promise to Kannagi's mother, especially since they didn't even know what would happen. Midori felt a brief moment of concern. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw Kannagi's mother still standing at the gate, giving her son some last-minute advice. She was reminding him how to wash his clothes properly and telling him not to sleep naked or he'd catch a cold. Her concern made a determined look flash across Midori's eyes. He silently promised himself that he would do his best. Meanwhile, Kannagi held back his emotions and said his final goodbye. Just as he was about to get into the car, his mother reminded him to come home for New Year's. Once they finally drove off, Midori asked Kannagi if he was all right. Kannagi admitted that he had to suppress his emotions a lot. Midori leaned back in his seat and told him to just do whatever he felt like, whether that meant eating or resting. Looking around, Kannagi noticed the lunchbox his mother had packed, neatly placed beside him. He opened it, his mother's words still fresh in his mind. When he lifted the lid, his eyes fell upon a small message of good luck, carefully placed on top of the pork cutlet. That simple gesture hit him deeply, stirring emotions he hadn't expected. He paused for a moment, thinking about all the care and sacrifices she had made for him. A quiet sense of gratitude filled his chest as he began to eat, though the meal came with the sting of unshed tears. Rin and Midori, sitting nearby, exchanged glances but remained silent, letting him process the moment in his own way as they continued their journey. When they finally arrived at their destination, Kannagi was stunned. He gazed at the impressive building, the headquarters of Anti-Prophecy. Midori welcomed him, explaining that only a select few awakened were allowed to enter. The weight of that knowledge sank in. For a brief moment, Kannagi felt overwhelmed, realizing what he was about to become part of. Inside one of the rooms, a man stood by the window, quietly observing their arrival. Without turning around, he spoke to someone else in the room, confirming that the new recruits had arrived. A girl with an unreadable expression asked if this was really about the newcomer. A young man replied that it was quite rare for them to gain a new comrade, but another man standing to the side with his arms crossed remained skeptical. He insisted that they should first find out if the newcomer was truly worthy of joining Anti-Prophecy. Meanwhile, outside the headquarters, Kannagi stood frozen for a moment, struggling to fully grasp his surroundings. Questions swirled in his mind. What exactly is the Anti-Prophecy unit, and could it have any connection to the Itagara Guild? Sensing his unease, Rin acknowledged that things weren't clear and apologized for not explaining earlier. She told him that she couldn't reveal everything to his mother because it was confidential, a matter of national secrecy. Those words struck Kannagi more deeply than he expected. As they headed toward the building, Midori suggested they take his luggage to the quarters. They headed to the dormitory first. Rin offered to help, but Kannagi refused, saying he could handle it on his own. Just as he was about to move, a sudden voice cut through the air, telling them to wait. The unexpected interruption startled him. He looked up and saw the young man from earlier standing above them. Without hesitation, the man declared that he would be the one to explain everything. Then in the same instant, he lunged forward with a powerful kick aimed directly at Kannagi. Instinctively, Kannagi raised his arms to block, but the sheer force shattered the ground beneath him. The impact sent a tremor through his body, yet he remained standing, bracing himself against the shock. The man seemed impressed. He acknowledged Kannag's resilience and even offered a rare word of praise. Intrigued, Kannagi paused for a moment before asking who he was. Without hesitation, the man stepped back and landed gracefully on the ground. He proudly introduced himself as Hanada Rikotaro, a member of the anti-prophecy unit and Kanaga's comrade. The revelation caught Kannagi off guard, but there was no time to hesitate. Hanada had been assigned to explain everything, and ready or not, the truth was about to be revealed. Meanwhile, Midori appeared completely unfazed. He simply asked Rin for a cup of tea. Rin nodded and served him one as the other two continued their sparring. Midori watched them calmly with a steady gaze. He asked Hanada why they were fighting if they were comrades. Hanada, still composed, explained that this served two purposes: to introduce Kannagi to the anti-prophecy unit and to test his abilities. The explanation lingered in Kanaga's mind, leaving him uncertain about what kind of test this really was. Without warning, Hanada moved again where the anti-prophecy unit came from. Kannagi listened, but remained skeptical. He doubted that Hanada would give him a full explanation while still attacking him. As the exchange continued, Hanada paused for a moment to ask Kannagi's name before proceeding. Without hesitation, he introduced himself as Kannagi Minato. Midori, still sipping his tea thoughtfully, wondered how Kannagi had been tested repeatedly, first by the academy, then by himself, and even by an S-rank hunter. Now he was facing yet another challenge. He turned to Rin, asking aloud if Kannagi would always have to face constant tests. Rin, appearing calm, said there was no way around it. After all, Kannagi had been personally recruited. Meanwhile, Hanada kept delivering relentless kicks, but Kannagi continued to block them with his hands. His endurance didn't falter. At one point, Hanada suddenly asked, "What is the role of a hunter?" Kannagi didn't hesitate. "A hunter's job is to eliminate monsters that emerge from dimensional rifts," he answered firmly. Hanada gave him a thumbs up, confirming his answer was correct. He then compared the role of hunters to pest control, a simple but powerful analogy. Suddenly, Hanada dropped to the ground and shifted the subject with a new question. He asked Kannagi about other dangers that exist outside the dimensional rifts. The question caught Kannagi by surprise. He hesitated, then asked Hanada to clarify what he meant by other dangers. Hanada's expression darkened slightly as he explained that the world faces threats far worse than mere dimensional cracks. He spoke of terrifying events, the castle of the 10,000 demons, pandemonium from 10 that had left lasting scars on the world. But before he could even respond, Hanada suddenly lunged at him again. Instinctively, Kannagi raised his arms and managed to block the attack, though the force of the blow sent him sliding. Catastrophes. He then added that Kannagi would understand much more about them once he began training at the academy. As soon as Kannagi regained his balance, his breathing steady, he barely had time to react. Hanada appeared above him in an instant, moving with incredible speed. Kannagi didn't even have time to think before Hanada's leg came down in a crushing axe kick. Kannagi barely managed to throw himself aside, dodging just in time as Hanada's foot struck the ground. A nearby tree took the full impact instead, splitting cleanly in half. The attack was so powerful that it left Kannagi momentarily stunned. Hanada then straightened up, his tone shifting as he continued explaining. He revealed that events such as the Tower of Malevolence from 300 years ago weren't just disasters, they were large-scale invasions, direct assaults from another dimension. Kannagi struggled to believe what he was hearing, trying to grasp the weight of those words. This wasn't just history, it was happening even now. Hanada stepped closer, his expression serious. He admitted that he didn't, the thought hanging as if what came next would change everything. He finally understood why today's awakened individuals seemed weaker than those from the era of the Tower. There simply weren't as many people who could match the strength of the original founders, and that truly bothered him. Torn between curiosity and concern, Kannagi finally asked the question he had been holding back. What should we do? Hanada's response was firm. That's exactly why the anti-prophecy unit exists. He explained that the people who can foresee such threats and predict real catastrophes don't share that knowledge with the public. They only tell the elites, those capable of actually dealing with such dangers, and those elites, Hanada said, are the members of the anti-prophecy unit. Midori and Rin couldn't help but smile proudly when they heard that. Kannagi realized that their entire purpose was to prevent those prophecies from ever coming true. Hanada told him that from that day forward he was officially part of their group. Hanada welcomed him warmly, saying that Kannagi was the first person who had ever managed to block his kicks one after another. He extended his hand as a sign of acceptance, and Kannagi shook it. Midori and Rin applauded, and then Hanada called out to the other awakened ones who had silently appeared above the house. Hanada asked what they planned to do, but they only stared for a moment before vanishing, which genuinely surprised Kannagi. Midori remarked that they disappeared like villains, but Hanada simply shook his head. He believed they wanted to see how things would unfold on their own. Hanada then told Midori to leave everything to him, and Midori departed. Afterward, Hanada helped Kannagi with his belongings and offered to show him his dorm room, for which Kannagi gratefully thanked him. That night, as he settled in, Kannagi couldn't stop thinking about what this organization truly meant. It was all about dealing with prophecies in their world. He wondered if the founders had faced a similar crisis during the era of the Tower, and if he was now fighting against something that had already been foreseen. His thoughts made him anxious, but then a voice suddenly cut through his worry, telling him that he had simply been training. Startled, he turned to see Enoch and the other founders standing right there. He quickly apologized for not speaking to them sooner, but Enoch told him not to worry, they had already made a decision. As the founders, they had decided to train him to become the strongest awakened one, just like Midori. With their help, he could become the most powerful awakened of all, one of their very own disciples. Kannagi was truly shocked, asking if they really wanted him as a disciple. Kannagi nodded and said yes, though he jokingly added that it might lead to a sort of battle royale among them. Concerned, Kannagi begged them not to fight over him. Kannagi explained that's how things had started, but after observing him more closely, the founders changed their minds. Instead of using his body for their own gain, they found it far more interesting to train him. Enoch then told him that when Kannagi defeated the poison user, he had actually copied all of the opponent's movements. He couldn't execute them perfectly, of course, but he learned the basics very quickly. Enoch asked if Kannagi understood the importance of that, pointing out that it was likely due to his symbol of nothingness. However, what truly made him special was the speed at which he learned. Enoch explained that this ability was actually stronger than any of the founders' own talents. As Enoch spoke, Kannagi felt tears well up in his eyes. He remembered the disappointed faces of his old instructors, those who told him he had no talent. Until now, no one had ever expected anything from him. Everything felt like a dream, especially since he had once been treated like garbage, constantly bullied for failing the hunter qualification test 3 times. He remembered the laughter of his classmates, their mocking voices telling him to just give up. His name had often been forgotten, lost in the crowd because no one cared enough to remember. No one had faith in his future, and he had grown used to being ignored. But now, 2 of the most renowned figures, Midori and Enoch, were truly acknowledging him. He couldn't believe it. It made him question whether he even deserved this sudden happiness. He had admired them from afar for years, never imagining that they would actually trust him. Enoch noticed his reaction, approached him with a comforting smile and placed a hand on his shoulder. He told Kannagi not to let his emotions take over. Then the truth was revealed. Their true souls resided within him, especially when he slept. This presence meant that he could access a space not bound by time or dimension. Knowing this, they created a rigorous training schedule for him. Every afternoon, he trained with the anti-prophecy unit, and at night in his dreams he continued his lessons. Peaceful sleep became a thing of the past, but he was already prepared for the challenge. He accepted their guidance immediately, determined to follow everything they said. The night passed and morning arrived. In the bathroom, Hanada was washing his face when he saw Kannagi walk in. They exchanged greetings, but Kannagi still looked extremely tired. He was clearly exhausted and admitted that he hadn't yet adjusted to the demanding schedule. Hanada understood completely, remembering how he himself had struggled when he first started at the dormitory. But then something unexpected caught Hanada.
Awakened, Hanada impulsively threw a quick kick. Even with an almost effortless movement, the man simply lowered his head, spat out the water in his mouth, and walked away. He didn't even look back. He ignored Hanada's silly morning prank, saying he had no patience for that kind of thing so early, and that he was heading to the cafeteria first. Hanada was left in disbelief. He realized that his attack had been faster than yesterday, yet it had been deflected so easily. Moments later, in the cafeteria, Hanada saw a good place to sit and walked over to a woman who was eating some fruit. He asked if she minded them joining her, and she gave a short, brusque nod of approval. Hanada took the chance, sat in front of her, and gestured for the man to sit beside him. Then he recognized her. She was one of Hanada's comrades from yesterday, but she still seemed distant. She spoke to him formally, making it clear she didn't really want him there. Even so, he greeted her and introduced himself. Her indifference was immediate. She wasn't interested in learning his name, and certainly didn't plan to remember it. She even lifted her fork, pointed it at him, and declared that she would only recognize his name when she deemed him worthy. Until then, training was the priority. He would have to accompany her on a mission to dispel a prophecy. This prophecy dated back to 1945, when people found the first book of prophecies buried beneath the Antarctic ice, 3,000 meters deep. They called it the Book of Destruction. The writing was crude, almost like a child's scribbles, but it predicted a catastrophic future. It said that 80 years later, the world would face a devastating attack and a series of apocalyptic disasters. The words were so heavy that everyone took them seriously. Later, while they were driving, she asked whether the world believed in the book's dark predictions. He thought for a moment, then looked at her, still not knowing her name. But before he could ask, she said there was no need for introductions. She only wanted his answer. He believed the prophecies had to be accurate, but she reacted immediately. She mocked his answer, practically questioning his intelligence. She said that if even one thing from the Book of Destruction came true, the world would end. That revelation left him stunned. As they continued talking, he turned to Hanada and asked how many prophecies had actually been recorded. Hanada guessed around 200, and that left him speechless. He couldn't help but wonder if the world was already beyond saving. But Midori assured him, saying they had already prevented almost 180 of those prophecies, which completely amazed him. Still trying to grasp everything, he asked again why the world believed so much in the book. The woman explained that an explorer named Bernard Russell found the Book of Destruction. As soon as Bernard opened it, the first page read, "Hello, Bernard," followed by a precise timestamp. March 17, 1945, at 11:35 a.m., on a sunny day, the exact moment he discovered it. That terrifying accuracy left no room for doubt. Hours later, they arrived at their destination, the Sumida district in Tokyo. An intermediate-level dimensional rift had opened there. As they approached, the guards blocked their way, firmly stating that the area was off-limits. But they simply ignored the warnings, passed the guards with incredible speed, and left them momentarily confused. He hesitated, wondering if it was really right to continue, but Hanada quickly reassured him that it was. The woman then began explaining the major crisis they were facing. She said that huge problems like World War III, the dark side of the moon, an invasive pandemic, and floating trees were all considered emergencies. Among them, the outbreak of pandemonium, which Hanada managed to stop, was especially serious. Although the Book of Destruction was well known, it was only one among many magical books scattered around the world, The job of the anti-prophecy unit was to gather information, analyze predictions, and act before things happened. She then went over the different threat levels they faced. A level 3, for example, meant one or more regions being destroyed. Level 2 was a national emergency, while Level 1 affected the planet's environment as a whole. Then there was a special level reserved for when the world itself was on the brink of destruction. He listened carefully, and upon realizing the severity of everything, he became alarmed. He quickly asked whether these missions now depended entirely on them. The woman didn't hesitate. She confirmed that yes, these responsibilities came with being part of the anti-prophecy unit. Shortly after, Zarek and his team spotted them crossing the caution line and immediately confronted them. Kisaraj, thinking they were just civilians, warned them to turn back, explaining how dangerous the area was. But she ignored his concerns, stating that today's prophecy was a Level 3 event. The dimensional fissure ahead looked like a B-class intermediate anomaly, but it was actually a far greater threat, a Level 3 disaster codenamed Yellow Journal. She was sure its hardness level would rise, and almost on cue, it began to widen at an alarming rate. Kisaraj turned, his eyes wide with horror, as the rift fully opened. Then a wave of creatures began to emerge, each one more monstrous than the previous one. He commanded his team sharply to prepare for battle, but the response was immediate and brutal. The creatures overwhelmed his forces within seconds, knocking them down with little resistance. Panic set in, and he cursed under his breath when he realized that even B and C-ranked hunters were struggling to stand on their feet. Then his attention shifted to something even more dangerous, the immense pressure coming from a boss-level monster. As he watched the newcomers advance, Kisaraj tried to intervene once more, warning them to fall back. But before he could say anything else, the woman pressed her hand to the ground and cast a spell called Trismegistos. Instantly, spears burst from the earth, impaling the creatures in a swift and merciless strike. Their bodies collapsed lifelessly as blood pooled around them. Hanada launched his own attack as well. He moved forward with incredible speed, gliding fluidly across the battlefield and taking down every enemy in his path with precise, calculated movements. Kisaraj watched everything speechless. He had always believed himself to be formidable as an S-ranked hunter, but these people were clearly far beyond him. He simply couldn't figure out who they were or where they had come from. Then the woman turned to Kisaraj and without hesitation told him to retreat. As far as they were concerned, he was just a civilian in this situation. Kisaraj's eyes dropped to his hand, where he saw an emblem imprinted on his skin. Recognition spread across his face. He realized they weren't there by coincidence. They were government agents. Before he could fully process what that meant, a massive hand burst from the dimensional rift, tearing it open even further. As the fissure widened, an imposing beast emerged. It was a De Leon, a being far beyond S-rank, towering over them, its monstrous form radiating an overwhelming presence. Without hesitation, the woman charged forward, ready to strike. Kisaraj shouted, warning her not to be reckless, but she ignored his concerns. Together, they launched their attack, completely unfazed by the threat before them. Hanada quickly began striking the beastman with a rapid series of kicks, only to realize in shock that his attacks had no effect. The creature's anti-physical armor rendered his blows useless, forcing him to retreat just as the monster lunged toward the woman. Without a moment's hesitation, she began gathering energy in front of her, preparing to counterattack. But before she could respond, Kannagi suddenly appeared between them. He halted the beastman's strike using nothing but his bare hand. The impact caused the beastman to erupt in a burst of energy, stunning everyone for a moment. When the dust settled, Hanada recognized the attack. It was a penetration strike. What truly surprised him, however, was that Kannagi had taken down an S-rank monster with a single blow. He realized that Kannagi's strength had increased dramatically overnight. Even though the woman claimed that kind of power wasn't necessary, he knew that when facing an enemy with high physical resistance, attacking from the inside was the most effective tactic. He had learned this from Antak, the fist saint, who had taught him the basics of penetration attacks the previous night. After that, Kannagi turned to the girl and asked her name, saying that since she had saved him, he at least deserved to know. She replied cheerfully that her name was Ai. There was no time to think. Hanada rushed back toward the battlefield, preparing to face the new wave of monsters emerging from the rift. The woman didn't hesitate. She unleashed her own attack, drenching her enemies in liquid mercury, then igniting it in a powerful explosion with her skill, Mercurius Reject. Together they pressed forward, realizing Kannagi had been right. Shattering their enemies from within was proving far more effective. Determined to continue, she signaled to Hanada. Without hesitation, the two of them headed straight for the dimensional rift, while Kisaraj could only watch in disbelief from behind. He knew that the world beyond the rift was something entirely different, a realm unknown, filled with unimaginable dangers. Entering it was pure madness. Before he could react, they had already leapt forward, diving through the rift without a second thought. Kisaraj stood there, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of A-class monsters. Then it hit him. These two weren't ordinary fighters. They had to be part of that rumored secret organization. The moment they entered the dimension, an overwhelming swarm of creatures awaited them. A quickly assessed the situation. Noticing that the monsters were identical to those outside, she raised her hand with perfect precision and conjured a barrage of mercury spears, instantly impaling the creatures. Kannag, still running, watched her technique and recognized her immense power. He finally understood why she was considered the strongest area of effect fighter within the anti-prophecy unit. After defeating the remaining enemies, A now stood before an enormous bear-type monster. Just as she prepared to strike, however, Hanada leapt toward it first. The bear saw him, and the bear swung its claws, but Hanada dodged by leaping onto the roof. He then followed up with a barrage of kicks around the beast. Kannag watched in amazement as Hanada moved so effortlessly, laughing the whole time. But then, to his shock, Kannag suddenly rushed toward the bear and unleashed a flurry of kicks, exactly like Hanada had done. He even asked Hanada if it looked similar to his technique. Hanada was surprised, but he couldn't help smiling in admiration. Once they defeated the monster, they pushed forward. A noticed that the farther they went, the fewer enemies they encountered. Eventually, they reached a large open area that resembled an arena. Suddenly, they felt an aura surrounding them and knew something was coming. Then, to their shock, an enormous, enraged warrior minotaur leapt out in front of them. It wasn't just any minotaur. This was a blind boss with triple S-rank power. Hanada and Kannag were stunned by its massive size, but A simply stood there indifferently, wondering if this really was the boss. Then a rain of spears shot out from the portal behind it. A shouted for the others to attack with everything they had, saying that she would deal with whatever came next. Hearing this, Hanada began to channel his energy, while Kannag stood in the back, impressed by both of them. But deep down, he knew their strength probably wouldn't be enough to defeat the beast. When Hanada heard him say that, he was shocked that Kannagi doubted their strongest attacks. Even with their barrage of magic, the beast simply swung its massive weapon, created a crater in the ground, and sent powerful shockwaves through the arena. When the dust settled, they were stunned. The creature was completely unscathed. Even after all their powerful blows, the group prepared to attack again. When Kannag readied himself, he suddenly heard someone praising A's talent. He recognized the voice. It was Kilik, the spirit of his founder. Kilik is an alchemist who was worried that A, with all her purity, agility, and incredible strength, might waste her talent by dying so young in this fight. Kilik said that A had done her best, but this minotaur existed on a completely different level of power. She had underestimated the monster's physical resistance, which was at a full 100%. Growing more concerned, Kannag asked what he should do, but Kilik only laughed. Meanwhile, Hanada and A were genuinely struggling against the beast. They realized they should have brought someone skilled in magic. When A looked toward Kannagi, she was stunned by the strange energy emanating from his body. Kannagi had surrendered control of his body to Killick, who then cast his powerful spell, Mercurius, directly at the beast's legs. The spell froze the lower half of its body, leaving A completely astonished. She was shocked not only because Kannagi used the same type of ability she did, but also because he used it in a way that completely immobilized the monster. Killick, still controlling Kannagi's body, glared seriously at A and called her a fool. He scolded her for not being flexible enough with her expertise, saying that she still needed to learn how to control substances in 3 different forms to truly become an alchemist. As Killick spoke, he simultaneously filled the Minotaur's entire body with mercury. As the liquid metal began to spill from the monster's mouth, he cast a boiling spell. The mercury inside the beast heated rapidly, boiling from within, and its toxic vapors spread throughout the arena, making it difficult for the others to breathe. A watched in awe, realizing that Killick hadn't used brute strength at all. He had used extreme temperatures to bring the monster down. While the Minotaur writhed in agony, its body overheated from the inside. While casting the spell, Killick casually told Kannagi that he wanted to make A his disciple. Kannagi, however, brushed it off as a joke. Eventually, the boiling mercury overwhelmed the Minotaur, reducing it to an inert heap on the ground. And just like that, the day's mission, defeating the boss, classified as a level 3 prophecy, ended in victory. A watched in disbelief, unable to comprehend what she had just seen. Kannagi had used an ability that should only be possible for an awakened being living inside a crest. She knew he had to be in the same class as Rico, yet he had managed to use alchemy at her level. Still shocked, she demanded to know who Kannagi really was. With a confident smile, Kannagi extended his hand and introduced himself. A, though irritated yet intrigued, reluctantly shook his hand, saying that she would definitely remember him. Hinata smiled happily, seeing Kannagi finally receive recognition from A. Meanwhile, Kisaraj and his men were still waiting outside. To their shock, the dimensional rift began to close. Just as it was about to seal completely, the trio leapt out in time. Kannagi asked if the mission was officially over and was informed that they simply needed to report back to headquarters. As they discussed what to do, Kisaraj approached them, thanking them for saving his team. He promised he wouldn't try to uncover their identities or... He couldn't explain what had happened inside. He thanked them for understanding and suggested that they include details about the emblem in their report. That would explain everything to the authorities. As the trio started to walk away, Zarate offered his help in case they ever got into trouble. But A turned back and said they would probably never meet again, telling him he should return to his normal life. Hearing this, Kisaraj realized that in the end, they were just civilians, people living in a world he could never reach. On May 11th, a red flash streaked across the streets of the Yone province village. A guard spotted it, but was completely perplexed, unable to identify what it was. Then, suddenly, a deafening boom tore through the sky above the village. Back at the Anti-Prophecy HQ, the trio stepped out of the car, and Kaus reminded them they still needed to write their report for headquarters. But then Renata received a message on his phone. They were being summoned to the laboratory. This was highly unusual, especially right after a mission. Curious, they headed to the Anti-Prophecy headquarters lab where 2 people were already waiting. One person stood on a stage, the other sat in the stands. Then, in a truly authoritative voice, someone remarked that Kenny had taken too long to deal with a level 3 disaster. Kannagi recognized him immediately. It was the red-haired man from before. A, however, was furious at his condescending attitude. She was irritated that he acted like the leader when he wasn't. Hinata quickly intervened to calm things down, asking what Director Kurihara needed. It turned out that the man on the stage was the director himself. Once everyone settled, he displayed a video sent by the analysis team. The video showed a glowing piece of charcoal, which the director explained was a prophecy grimoire. They had found it in a volcanic region, and had been analyzing it ever since. Ken wondered if it was even possible to read a grimoire in that damaged state, but the director, adjusting his glasses, revealed that they had extracted some information using AI technology and X-rays, although its full meaning was still unclear. What they had managed to decipher was a prophecy that clearly mentioned Japan. Everyone in the room was shocked, especially Ken, because this was a new prophecy they had never encountered before. The director continued and explained that anti-prophecy research was extremely advanced, gathering information from all over the world. Finding an unknown prophecy like this was highly unusual, but this situation was different. The red-haired man understood immediately. The four of them needed to investigate. The director praised his intuition and explained that this mission would normally go to the regular members, but they were currently unavailable. Hearing this, Kannagi realized this must be why Midori wasn't present when they returned. The director then ordered them to depart immediately, promising more details by email. Kannagi was surprised they were receiving another mission so quickly, but the red-haired man simply told him he would get used to it. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Kannagi clenched his fists as a frightening thought crossed his mind. This time, the fate of the world might truly be at stake. Su slammed his hand on the table and stood up. In a firm, authoritative tone, he announced that he and his 3 subordinates accepted the mission. Ken was clearly irritated. He was acting like the boss again. As they left, the director gave them one final warning. He told them to be cautious, as they still didn't know how severe this mission would be. He also reminded them that even if the prophecy began to unfold, they would have to wait for the main force before taking action. In the car, Kannagi felt uneasy about all the unknown dangers of the mission. In the front seat, Su suggested they rest for a while. He noted that Kannagi had just completed his first mission, but A, driven by pride, refused. She insisted that he had no right to give her orders. Surprisingly, however, both Raneda and Kannagi accepted the offer immediately and fell asleep within moments. Su was determined to stay awake and fought off the fatigue, but as the night went on, exhaustion eventually overtook her as well. Sometime later, the car stopped. A woke up and realized the vehicle was empty. Alarmed, she ran outside and found the others standing on a cliff, staring at a bright light below them. What she saw left her in complete disbelief. An enormous magic circle spread across the ground on a scale far beyond anything they had imagined. Raneda quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. It was far worse than they expected. The prophecy was almost complete. Skeletal figures were emerging from the ground, still trapped within massive crystals. Their eerie glow cast an ominous light across the entire area. A chill ran down their spines as they realized they might already be too late. These skeletons were the 23 villagers mentioned in the report. Su recalled a similar incident from the past. 30 years ago, the Wakayama mansion had mysteriously vanished, and a dimensional rift had nearly opened. As he explained this, the enormous pillar at the center of the magic circle began erupting with bursts of energy. Noticing this, the explosion urged them to move quickly. Haneda drew his sword and asked what they should do. Su revealed that they had to stop. A quickly reminded them of the director's orders. They had been instructed to wait for further commands. But before they could discuss it, they felt a massive aura behind them. When they turned around, they saw Kannagi covered in an overwhelming energy, ready to fight. The group immediately noticed that Kannagi seemed much stronger than before. Even so, Su remained unfazed. He simply smiled, stepped forward, and told the others to follow him. They all ran after him, though A warned him not to act so recklessly. As they descended toward the magic circle, Rinak and the mage suddenly caught a scent in the air. It seemed strangely familiar, an aroma they had encountered many times in their lives. The ground shook violently, and with an explosion, a massive hand burst out from underground. Hinoke's eyes widened in shock. He now knew exactly what they were smelling. It was the scent of a forbidden technique, the very prophecy written in the Book of Scorching Heat. Hinoke explained that long ago, during the A period, an awakener named Bando Shidima, leader of the Black Magus, committed genocide. The Onmyo-jigais eventually killed him, but an entire village had been caught in the chaos. Shidima collected the blood of the fallen villagers and used it to draw a magic circle, ensuring he would be reborn 1,000 years later. His goal was to devour everyone and rule the world as a demon king. Before dying, he left behind a forbidden technique showing how living beings would be sacrificed for his resurrection. Now, in the present, Shidima had reincarnated as a boss whose rank no one knew. His mission was clear: to fulfill the prophecy of the scorching heat. He looked at his hands and grimaced, realizing he had returned with far less power than expected. He wondered whether there had not been enough sacrifices for the ritual. As he looked around, he noted with amusement that even after 1,000 years, the place had not changed at all. But his lips curled into a maniacal smile when he saw the anti-prophecy unit approaching. To him, they were merely more sacrifices. Channeling his dark arts, he unleashed the yin plate, causing a massive explosion directly beneath the charging anti-prophecy unit. Kannagi became alarmed as the blast engulfed Hanada and Kane, but they were unharmed once the dust had settled. Then his expression darkened as he saw a dark magic circle appear where they had landed. It was the dark art of the realm of death. Hundreds of spirits emerged from the circle, extending their ghostly hands to seize Hanada and Kane. They fought them off, quickly realizing that Shidima was far more skilled than they had expected. As Shidima watched his spell take effect, he suddenly sensed something behind him. It was Kannagi attacking from surprise. Shidima dodged effortlessly, bending and slipping past the strike without any effort. Smirking, he called Kannagi an amateur, and then launched another yin plate directly beneath him. The explosion erupted, but to Shidima's surprise, Kannagi was unharmed. Kannagi counterattacked with his thunderbolt-ad ability, but Shidima blocked it with his own dark magic. Even though he stopped the attack, Shidima was impressed by Kannagi's choice of technique. Through the smoke, Su approached from behind Shidima and used his spell Chrysanthemum, launching a barrage of sharp knives toward him. Shidima was startled, but dodged by leaping into the air. While he was airborne, Su cast another spell, having already expected that such a weak attack wouldn't bring him down. Su struck his weapon against the ground and used his ability, causing knives to rain from the sky. But Shidima simply smiled, calling it a mere rain of lights. Then he transformed his hand into a shield to block the attack, though the recoil was significant. After blocking, Shidima realized that Su was probably the strongest among them. Kannagi, watching from the side, thought that Shidima's power was limitless, completely different from any enemy they had ever faced. Shidima himself seemed even stronger than the founders. As Kannagi thought this, he heard his friend shouting from behind. He turned and was shocked to see Kane and Hanada being struck by dark art abilities. They managed to evade the attack and began charging toward Shidima, who was still locked in battle with Su. As they closed in, Shidima summoned 3 skeletal demons to deal with Kane and Hanada. Hanada saw one demon appear right in front of him and kicked it, but to his surprise, it did absolutely nothing. The bodies of these monsters were as tough as the minotaurs they had faced before. As Shidima and Su continued exchanging blow after blow, one of the skeletal demons stood directly in front of Kannagi, blocking his path. Shidima even mocked Su, declaring that he would receive no help from his friends. But immediately after Shidima said that, Su struck him directly in the shoulder. "I don't need help," he declared. Then he pointed at Shidima. "Stay back. I trust only my own strength." Shidima simply wiped the blood from his wound and began screaming like a madman, shouting that he didn't need anyone either, and that he would devour them all. With that, he charged straight at Su, who barely managed to block the attack just a few centimeters from his body. As Su struggled to withstand Shidima's relentless assault, he heard someone calling his name from behind. It was Kannagi, running directly at Shidima. Shidima was surprised to see Kannagi, especially because he had already sent a demon to stop him. He quickly looked back and saw the others still fighting their demons, but the one he had sent after Kannagi was sliced clean in half. Even Sue was impressed by the attack. Kannagi then suggested that they should fight together to defeat Shidima. Sue was shocked for a moment. Kane and Akon hadn't even defeated their own opponents yet, but this guy had already done so, and now he was offering help. But Sue's pride was stronger. He completely rejected Kannagi's offer, declaring, "I don't need anyone's help. I'm more than enough to fight alone." Kannagi couldn't believe it, but before they could argue further, Shidima suddenly approached. He released his technique, Magatsu's breath, and a powerful beam was fired directly at the two of them. Sue managed to block, but Kannagi was thrown back, his body struck hard by the devastating blast. He slammed into a tree, and his vision began to blur as he started to lose consciousness. As he drifted into unconsciousness, he saw Hinoke and the Major Spirit standing right in front of him. Hinoke told him that he had fainted, which is why they had summoned him into his own consciousness. Even with his body bruised, battered, and tortured by pain, Kannagi tried to stand, desperately asking them to send him back. He had to fight. But before they could reply, a deep and authoritative voice echoed through the space, ordering him to step back. Meanwhile, outside, Sue struggled to defend against Shidima's relentless attacks. Shidima smiled, even praising Sue for thinking like him, believing that neither of them needed anyone else in battle. With a sinister grin and his insatiable desire to devour everything, he put all his power into his next strike. He struck with such force that Sue's sword shattered in half. Although stunned, Sue quickly summoned another blade and swung it at Shidima. But Shidima dodged effortlessly, bending backward with almost supernatural flexibility. Shidima clearly seemed to be enjoying himself more and more as Sue continued fighting. Meanwhile, back in the spiritual realm, Kannagi's spirit form watched the battle unfold. They all knew that Shidima was stronger than anyone present. Hinoke told Kannagi that this situation was far beyond anything he could give him, and the mage added that Shidima's precision was terrifyingly high. If more humans had been living in that place, Shidima could have already become a demon king. She warned Kannagi that if Shidima took his life as well, it would make him even stronger and wreak havoc on civilization. She even said that the discovery of the Grimorium had been nothing but coincidence. Then Hinok stepped forward, asking Kannagi to lend them his body so they could take care of this. But to their complete surprise, Kannagi refused outright. He apologized, but firmly said, "This isn't training, this is real." He explained that he had to overcome this obstacle on his own, just as he would have to overcome things in the future. Filled with confidence and determination, he looked at them and asked if they agreed. The mage tried to argue, but Hinok interrupted. He told Kannagi, "You've already surpassed us." Hinok placed a hand on Kannagi's shoulder, reminding him of his vow to overcome the founders. Then he encouraged Kannagi to go, use everything he had learned, and do things his own way. This greatly boosted Kannagi's confidence. With a determined expression, he faced the battlefield and asked the founders to watch over him. Without hesitating for even a moment, he ran toward the field where Shidima and Sue were still fighting fiercely. Sue looked battered and exhausted. As soon as he opened his eyes, Shidima attacked again, sending him flying through the air. While Sue was still airborne, Shidima prepared the finishing blow to end him. But just as Sue braced for impact, someone grabbed him mid-air. Kannagi had caught both Sue and his sword. Still in the air, he quickly borrowed Sue's sword and with swift movement hurled Sue toward the ground, away from the range of Shidima's magic beam. Sue crashed into the ground hard, and Shidima immediately shifted his attention to Kannagi, who remained suspended in the air. Shidima fired another Magatsu's breath directly at him, but was shocked. Kannagi was calmly using Hinok's one-handed sword style. With razor-sharp focus, Kannagi sliced straight through Shidima's breath attack, cutting it cleanly in half. Then with precise control, he struck Shidima's arm, severing it completely from his body. Shidima was stunned, horrified, and speechless. He had no idea what had just happened. Trembling with rage, he screamed about his identity, but Kannagi, fully determined, replied coldly that he was the one who would surpass the founders. The mage watching asked Hinok if Kannagi would defeat the Black Magus, but even Hinok didn't know. Still, Hinok was certain that Kannagi is no fool. He suspects that Kannagi may have learned something new while he slept in the car on the way here. A wide smile spreads across Hinok's face, making Kannagi wonder if even he understands what is happening. Sue is equally shocked as he watches Kannagi move with such efficiency and fluidity. Just moments ago, he had refused Kannagi's help, yet now that very same help is saving his life. Meanwhile, Kannagi continues to attack Shidima relentlessly, forcing Shidima to teleport backward. Shidima counterattacks with his dark art Roman, sending a rain of energy blasts toward Kannagi. Kannagi tries to dodge them, but quickly realizes they are tracking him. Kannagi leaps to escape, but the explosions continue to pursue him. Suddenly, he remembers one of the Founder's abilities, Aftershock. He slams his foot into the ground, raising a stone barrier in front of him to block the incoming attacks. Shidima is surprised by Kannagi's tactics, but quickly launches more blasts in his direction. Kannagi responds by using the shattered stone fragments to protect himself again. Then, seeing his chance, Kannagi combines two abilities and moves swiftly behind Shidima. But Shidima manages to dodge in time. He counterattacks immediately, unleashing his yin explosion plate, striking Kannagi. Kannagi is hit, but absorbs most of the impact. Using a stone suspended in the air as a platform, he launches himself toward Shidima, recalling the lessons of the Founders. Shidima dodges again, but the variety of techniques Kannagi uses leaves him stunned. Even the Founders watching from afar are shocked by Kannagi's rapid growth and his constant assault. But Shidima is not finished. With a dark expression, he activates his forbidden art, summoning a gigantic skeletal monstrosity. By fusing multiple skeletons together, the massive creature towers over everyone, emanating a powerful and malevolent aura. Shidima smiles. "This is the end," he says. The giant skeleton swings its massive hand toward Kannagi as the Founders shout for him to run. But Kannagi simply stands still, unmoving, staring at the incoming attack. He is focused. He knows he still lacks the power to defeat Shidima, even if he gave everything he had. He needs something more, something beyond his current limits. Remembering the lessons of the mage and Hinok, Kannagi recalls how to handle the brilliant flame and Hinok's one-handed sword technique. He remembers Hinok teaching him the wave blade attack and various cuts. Drawing inspiration from both teachings, Kannagi channels the brilliant flame into his hand, while infusing his sword with Hinok's technique, turning his weapon into a blazing blade. The mage and Hinok watch in shock. Kannagi has just achieved the impossible. Holding his newly empowered weapon, Kannagi is ready. The technique he has just executed is called the blazing fire-cutting blade. Without hesitation, he charges at the skeletal beast, swinging his flaming sword, as Shidima watches in disbelief. Remembering Hinok's teachings on the blade and the mage's magical arts, Kannagi merges the two. With fierce determination, he uses the blazing fire-cutting blade, enveloping his sword in flames. With one swift motion, he slices the skeleton in half from head to toe, cutting through Shidima as well. Everyone is shocked by this feat, by his ability to combine two magical skills in such a manner. The alchemist founder is particularly impressed, calling Kannagi an irregular for his ability to switch and combine all kinds of abilities. He never expected Kannagi to fuse techniques so easily, and he suspects there may be even more to his potential. Suddenly, the alchemist vanishes, leaving Hinok confused. The mage, hearing his words, agrees, realizing they may have underestimated Kannagi's abilities. She now feels a twinge of concern, wondering if it is wise to create someone like him. Hinnock, however, is excited by Kannag's power and eager to see how far he can grow. When Kannagi lands on the ground exhausted, he is shocked to see Shidima, who had been split in two, begin to regenerate from his own blood. Enraged, Shidima growls that if the attack had hit his head, he might have died. Channeling dark energy, he forms a death orb, promising to end things himself. But as he speaks, Sue suddenly slashes his throat from behind. Shidima is decapitated, completely caught off guard. As his body collapses, Sue grabs Kannagi, who has fallen unconscious. Holding him, Sue remembers a distant memory. His older brother once carried him in the same way. It had been a freezing night under a bridge, snow covering the ground. His brother had promised to bring food in the morning. As Tezu drifted to sleep, they heard the sounds of a large parade above the bridge, others celebrating while they trembled in the cold with empty stomachs. This memory reminds Tezu why he chose solitude. Shidima had tried to manipulate him by exploiting that loneliness. But as he looks at Kannag now, he realizes something. He is not truly alone, and even, whatever it is, he can endure it. As he ponders this, the barrier around them begins to crack. Kana and Rana rush in immediately, worried when they see Kannag unconscious. Once they confirm that he has simply fainted, Hanada notices that the barrier is collapsing from within. She warns them that they need to act quickly. Rana asks what will happen if the energy inside the barrier erupts outward. Sue grips his sword tightly, revealing that if it does, they will all be crushed to death. Their only option is to strike it with their strongest attack and try to redirect it. Although Sue says this confidently, deep inside he is unsure whether they can manage it in their current state, but they have no choice. As they prepare, Kannag, still unconscious, suddenly reaches for his sword, channeling energy into it. Sue notices this in shock. Inside Kannag's mind, Hinnock takes control, guiding his body. When the barrier explodes, everyone releases their full power, while Hinnock executes his cloud-splitting one-handed style. Outside the barrier, a red-haired man rushes toward the scene, accompanied by two others. His subordinates warn him that the barrier is about to collapse. Suddenly, it bursts open. The men fear they may be too late, but to their surprise, a brilliant beam of blue light shoots into the sky from Kannag's sword. The red-haired man watches in awe, recognizing the light as a flawless sword technique performed without hesitation. His name is Suom Makoto, captain of the anti-prophecy unit. Observing the spectacle before him, he wonders who could be responsible for such mastery. Later, aboard a plane flying over Peru, Midori is on a call with Makoto, shocked that the new recruit has just stopped an unknown prophecy. Meanwhile, in Japan, Makoto, still on the phone, faces a first-class prophecy, one he claims is far more powerful than what they encountered before. Instead of boarding the plane, Midori sits atop it, smiling as he reflects on how much the anti-prophecy unit has grown, even if he isn't there to witness it personally. However, his amusement fades when Makoto reveals that the central member who interrupted the prophecy was none other than Kannagi, the same Kannagi who joined the team only 2 days earlier. Stunned, Makoto desperately demands to know who he really is. Without hesitation, Midori confidently declares that Kannag is the one who will end all prophecies. They had been anticipating his arrival for a long time. There had always been a lingering sense of expectation surrounding him, as if he was the one they had been waiting for. Makoto, skeptical of such grand hopes, questions whether their faith in him is truly justified. Instead of arguing, he is simply told to see for himself. Changing the subject, Makoto insists that Midori return. His presence is needed, as facing an opponent of equal strength without him is proving difficult. Midori offers a brief apology before shifting his focus. Meanwhile, Rin approaches, her voice urgent as she speaks of a great prophecy unfolding before them. An enormous enemy, a super-rank prophecy, the leader of the suicidal infection, Stam. As the monstrous being charges toward them, Midori tells Makoto to hold on, assuring him he will finish soon. Without hesitation, he reaches out and unleashes the divine wind turbulence. At that exact moment, in a hospital room, Kannagi's eyes suddenly snap open. A gasp escapes his lips as he sits up abruptly. A nurse, noticing his sudden movement, leans in to reassure him. She informs him that he has finally regained consciousness. He has been in the anti-prophecy infirmary sleeping since the end of his mission. Hearing this, Kannagi wonders if he merely lost consciousness. His sleep was so deep he hadn't even entered the spatial realm to train with the founders. The nurse assures him that he is fine, opening the curtain before reminding him to call if he needs anything. As she draws the curtain aside, Kannagi notices Sue sitting nearby, arms crossed, silently watching him. Seeing him there, Kannagi wonders if Sue had been watching over him the entire time he was unconscious. Kannagi looks around and realizes that Hanada and Rana are missing. Curious, he asks about them, and Sue reveals that they are training, frustrated by their perceived uselessness in the last battle. With a tone of acceptance, Sue calmly states that Kannagi's power was overwhelming. Hearing such praise from a man like Sue shocks the young powerhouse, but before he can fully process it, Sue suddenly stands up and aggressively demands to know who he really is. In less than 2 days since his arrival, Kannagi has already defeated a third-rank boss and a possible first-rank boss, while using a rare fusion spell Sue has never seen before. Pressing the question again, Sue demands to know Kannagi's true identity, and how he too can become like him. As Sue continues to press for answers, Makoto suddenly arrives, asking if Kannagi is the one he's been Makoto asks if Kannagi is the one he has been looking for. Kannagi confirms, but Sue is stunned by the unexpected arrival of his older brother. Makoto walks past Sue without even looking at him, while Kannagi hesitantly asks if he truly is Sue's older brother. The moment the question leaves his lips, Makoto suddenly draws his sword and swings it within inches of everyone in the room. Sue and Kannagi are caught completely off guard. Dodging the attack, Kannagi wonders if this is some kind of test, while Makoto, equally surprised, marvels that a mere trainee managed to avoid his strike. Makoto confirms that it was indeed a test, and Kannagi passed. Without hesitation, he introduces himself as the captain of Suo's squadron, Suo Makoto. The realization hits Kannagi hard. Makoto really is Sue's older brother. After a brief pause, Makoto announces that due to Kannagi's extraordinary performance against the Rank 1 Calamity, he will be temporarily joining his squad. The announcement shocks Kannagi, but Sue is even more stunned. A trace of jealousy stings him. Despite being Makoto's younger brother, he has never been allowed to join his squad. Wasting no time, Makoto orders Kannagi to follow him to a briefing. In the background, Sue clenches his fist so tightly in frustration that his knuckles begin to bleed. Meanwhile, in the training area, the duo from the anti-prophecy unit are training intensely. Kana wields several weapons, while Renata focuses on blocking her attacks. No matter how hard they push themselves, they know that reaching Kannagi's level is almost impossible. As they continue practicing, Midori suddenly walks in, announcing his arrival with chocolates from Peru. To his shock, they ignore the chocolates completely and rush toward him, eagerly asking how long he will be staying in Japan. When Midori reveals he will stay for a week, the duo immediately insists on training under his guidance during that time. They refuse to let Kannagi surpass them without a fight. Surprised, Midori hadn't expected them to be so determined. He agrees to train them, but then asks about Suo, wondering whether he wants to join as well. Right as he finishes speaking, Suo arrives, his expression filled with pure determination as he confirms he will also join. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Kannagi keeps up with Makoto's fast pace as he leads the way. Back in the training room, the group is shocked to see Su so determined to train. Su reveals that Kannagi has been summoned by his older brother to temporarily join his squad. This revelation surprises the duo, making them realize just how far Kannagi has progressed. Being personally recruited by Makoto is no small feat. However, Su sees this as a sign of his own shortcomings compared to Kannagi, believing he must become much stronger. In the hallway, Kannagi, curious, asks Makoto about the meeting. Makoto reveals that it concerns their next mission, which they will depart for the following morning. As they walk, Makoto suddenly stops and asks if Kannagi is close to his younger brother. Remembering their last battle together, when Su lent him a sword, Kannagi excitedly confirms that he is. Although Makoto acts indifferent, he secretly cares deeply for his brother, but never shows it. Because of this, Su misunderstands that Makoto hates him and doesn't care. The truth is that during Makoto's previous visit, he didn't ignore Su, he simply couldn't bear to look at his injuries. However, that misunderstanding made Su believe that Makoto was brushing him aside, fueling his determination to risk his life and grow stronger just to earn his brother's attention. One day, he hopes to defeat Makoto himself. Still curious, Kannagi pushes Makoto a bit more, and Makoto finally admits that he truly does care for his little brother. Kannagi finds this touching. Back in the training area, as Su explains everything to the group, Kana is confused. Even though Su talks about surpassing his brother and proving himself, he still respects him deeply. While continuing her training with Hanada, Kana comments that, in the end, Su just wants his brother's attention. Hanada finds this adorable, but Akan's words trigger something in Su, leaving him infuriated. Meanwhile, at the meeting, Kannagi learns about the team's 3 main rules. 1. Be fast. 2. Maintain offensive pressure. 3. Overcome weaknesses. Within the Counterforce division, Makoto's team is considered the strongest in combat capability. The team operates with a minimum of 7 members, designed to function as a small but elite force. Their primary targets are level 1 threats and above. Aboard the helicopter, as Makoto's squad is escorted toward their mission, a squad member named Jakairo casually comments that 90% of the team's power comes from their captain, while the rest are just background characters. Since Kannagi is only a temporary member, not much is expected from him. However, while Jakairo is explaining this, Kannagi is distracted, busy on his phone. Jakairo points this out, which leads Kannagi to apologize, explaining that he needs to contact his friends. Confused, Jakairo asks what he means by contact. Kannagi is trying to reach the other members of the anti-prophecy group since the founders keep insisting on it. While the group is training, they receive his message, and upon reading it they are all shocked, especially Su, who wonders what the hell Kannagi is thinking by sending it. They immediately show it to Midori, who discovers that the message contains 3 separate pieces of advice, each tailored to a different person. The detailed guidance on how to become stronger impresses Midori. Smiling, he extends his hand and asks whether they will follow the advice or reject it. Seeing it as a challenge, everyone accepts, especially Suo, who is furious because Kannagi has essentially rubbed salt in his wounds. Back on the plane, Jakairo informs Kannagi that they have reached their destination. Wiping the window, Kannagi is amazed by the sight of a vast snowy mountainous landscape with enormous crystal peaks emerging from the ground. Their mission is to deal with a rank 1 prophecy, Frozen Earth. This disaster threatens to freeze the entire planet as the affected areas are expanding at an alarming rate. If it is not contained, the whole Earth could be consumed, ending all life. This phenomenon is occurring simultaneously in 17 different locations in various countries, many of them in urban areas, which only worsens the crisis. Vice Captain Cash informs the team about the situation, emphasizing that they cannot afford delays, as reports indicate the freezing effect is spreading faster than expected. Leading the mission, Makoto orders the team to jump from the back of the helicopter since it cannot proceed safely any further. Before they jump, he reminds them that no human life must be harmed. To motivate everyone, he orders them to chant the team's 3 rules, and they shout them in unison. At the rear, Kannagi reflects on his last battle, where once again he relied on Hinak in the end. Determined to become stronger during this temporary mission, he sees it as a valuable opportunity to learn from the other members. When everyone jumps from the helicopter, Kannagi decides to complete this mission on his own. This is his first rank 1 prophecy. At 10:17 a.m., everyone lands safely on the ground. The air is freezing, and despite being a trained fighter, Jakairo catches a cold, questioning how the temperature is affecting him. Kashi explains that the cold is far worse than the reports indicated, which may be the reason. He also informs the team that the area is vast and suggests setting up a camp midway. Hearing this, Makoto considers something, but keeps it to himself. Meanwhile, Kannagi asks Cairo whether the prophecy Frozen Earth is recorded in any prophecy book. Jakairo denies it, revealing that the anti-prophecy unit predicted it using their unique abilities. Although there are many prophecies, this is the first time a member has successfully identified a rank 1 prophecy. That is why Makoto's team was chosen for the mission, given its severity. Kannagi's question is answered, but Kashi notices that he seems a bit nervous. Kashi reassures him, saying that being nervous is better than letting his guard down, but he shouldn't let it become a burden. Jakairo places a hand on Kannagi's shoulder, repeating Kashi's words and reminding him that he is moving with the best team in the anti-prophecy unit. Kashi yells at Jakairo for being too relaxed, causing him to apologize immediately. Suddenly, Jakairo raises his hand, reporting that his radar has detected enemies at 2 o'clock, approximately 200 meters away. Kashi acknowledges the report and disappears in an instant, only to reappear moments later. She confirms that she scouted ahead and saw 30 monsters with an estimated rank of SSS+. These creatures belong to the ice gargoyle race of the Tisei tribe. Upon hearing this, Makoto immediately orders his unit to annihilate the enemy. The squad advances toward the approaching monsters in a highly coordinated manner. Their teamwork and situational awareness leave Kannagi impressed. They operate on a completely different level compared to the recruits, making him realize that these are elite warriors, far beyond regular members. Eager to join the fight, Kannagi asks for permission, which Makoto grants, dismissing the enemies as nothing more than SSS rank. With permission granted, Kannagi charges forward and kicks a monster in the head. However, to his shock, the creature explodes, launching shards in all directions. Kiyashi, skillfully dodging the attack of a flashy monster, warns everyone that some extremely powerful monsters are mixed in with the others. Meanwhile, Kannagi activates his slicing blade of fire and completely obliterates a monster with a flaming attack, launching it far away. Witnessing this, Jinro is surprised that someone like Kannagi used a fury sword technique. Kashi is impressed, while Makoto, with just a few swings of his sword, effortlessly cuts down the remaining monsters. He also notices Kannagi's fire sword and realizes that the blue beam of light he saw earlier must have come from it. With the monsters defeated, the group sets up camp in the mountains and begins to eat. During the meal, Kashi asks Cairo what else he saw on the radar. Cairo reports that there are no boss-level threats within 10 kilometers of his radius. Hearing this, Kashi sighs of relief, confirming that they can safely spend the night there. However, she soon wonders where Kannagi and the captain went. Meanwhile, Kannagi is sitting by his own campfire, trying to fuse his spells just as he did before. As he concentrates, the captain suddenly approaches from behind and calls out to him, praising his enthusiasm for training. Startled, Kannagi nearly jumps out of his skin when Makoto scares him by approaching so silently. After calming him down, Makoto sits beside him and asks if this is his first time camping and whether he finds it difficult. Kannagi enthusiastically says he is fine, but to his surprise, Makoto casually remarks that he just wants to go home and smoke. Kannagi is shocked. He never expected someone like the captain to mention smoking. But to Kanagi's horror, Makoto then reveals that he is desperate to smoke his cat. Confused and alarmed, Kannagi completely misunderstands, thinking the captain is talking about drugs. He immediately questions him about his cat, and Makoto, getting uncomfortably close, takes out his phone and shows him a picture. Kannagi asks the cat's name, and Makoto reveals that it is Oribi. As Kannagi examines the photo, he notices the cat's fierce expression, but instead asks whether Makoto actually misses him. To his surprise, Makoto denies it, revealing that Oribi is a true menace, always scratching things, vomiting everywhere, and being a general nightmare. Despite all that, Makoto admits the cat is still adorable, just like his younger brother Su. Kannagi finds it strange to hear Makoto talk this way, but he listens as the captain, with a hopeful tone, expresses his wish to one day talk with Su the way he is talking with Kannagi now. Kannagi, being an only child, admits he can't relate, but offers a suggestion. Kannagi maybe Makoto should treat Su the same way he treats his cat. Hearing this, Makoto smiles and agrees. He then shows Kannagi some videos on his phone, shocking him with footage of the captain treating his cat like a baby. Amused, Makoto asks if such behavior is really acceptable. Then, with a gentle expression, he looks at Kannagi and asks if they can train together. In Kannagi's mind, he panics, but before he can respond, Kashi arrives looking for them. She tells them to return to camp, reminding them that they need to depart early the next morning. Makoto agrees without complaint that night. However, Makoto and his team remain unaware of a mysterious figure wandering through the snowy land. Dressed casually as if going to the beach, the person ventures deeper into the frozen terrain. When he stops, he declares that he is on a mission to fulfill the prophecy tied to this place. Holding a small book in his hand, he states that it is an important mission. He is a solo awakener heading toward the same mountain as Makoto and his squad. At the camp, while Kannagi sleeps, he finds himself training in his dreams with the founders. Today's lesson is archery, meant to improve his concentration. He practices with a heavy bow under Margot's guidance. Noticing that Kannagi is sweating, Margot asks whether it is painful to maintain such steady focus. As they train, Hinoki loudly complains about why it isn't sword training day, but the mage quickly silences him, reminding him that it was his turn yesterday. Despite the noise, Margot is impressed that Kannagi remains unfazed, showing significant improvement in maintaining his concentration compared to their first session. Kannagi explains that he is currently on a mission with an incredible team, which motivates him to give his all. With his focus locked on the target, he releases the arrow, hitting the center with perfect precision. Margot is amazed by his accuracy as Kannagi collapses to the ground, sighing of relief. Margot reminds him not to forget the feeling and ends the day's training. Realizing the session is over, Hinoki becomes excited, immediately drawing his sword and ordering Kannagi to get up for sword training. But just as they are about to begin, Kannagi is suddenly awakened by his team. It is time to continue the journey. Before they depart, Makoto tells everyone that today they will defeat the boss connected to the prophecy. As they moved forward, they encountered more monsters, this time a flock of blue birds. When the team advanced toward them, the founders within Kannagi commented that the mission should be easy, given the team's power. However, the mage noticed that one of the oldest founders seemed uneasy, sensing that something was wrong with the fight. After a brief battle, the team successfully eliminated the monsters, clearing the path ahead. Makoto then ordered Jikaru to scout forward. Jikaru reported that approximately 2,000 meters from their position, there was likely a massive boss heading straight toward them. He then delivered the horrifying news that the monster would reach them in just 10 seconds. Moments later, an imposing figure known as the unknown god Calamitous came charging toward them with a ferocious, maniacal expression. Her aura was completely unlike anything they had faced before. Makoto immediately ordered his team to attack, and they charged forward in perfect coordination. Takaro used his abilities to chain the creature, while Kaisha attacked from every angle. However, to their shock, their attacks caused no visible damage. The boss remained completely unharmed despite the well-executed combo. Just as the boss was about to counterattack, it suddenly sensed something approaching from above. It was Kannagi, descending with a powerful sword strike. Remembering what Hinoki had taught him about executing a vertical slash, he unleashed his strongest attack first, ready to strike with full force. Combining his power, Kannagi attacked with his blazing fire blade, sending a beam of fire toward the boss. To his shock, it had no effect. The boss immediately counterattacked, swinging her own sword and slamming Kannagi into the ground. Hearing the powerful impact, Jikaru momentarily believed that Kannagi had died. However, Kannagi survived after falling onto an ice crystal that cushioned his fall. Meanwhile, Kashi, still fighting, realized why this boss was ranked number 1. She glanced toward Makoto. Now it was up to him to save them. Makoto drew his sword, and the moment he did, Jikaru instantly bound Kannagi in chains and lifted him out of the battle, stating that if they interfered, they would only hinder their captain. As they retreated, the boss attacked Makoto with full force. The sheer power of the blow created a massive shockwave, causing Kannagi to worry about Makoto's safety. To his astonishment, Makoto stopped the attack just centimeters from his body. The boss attacked again, and once more Makoto blocked it effortlessly. Without hesitation, he counterattacked with a devastating strike, severing one of the boss's arms. Watching this, Hinoki exclaimed that he wanted to do the same. However, Kannagi firmly refused to let Hinoki take over his body. Facing the wounded boss, Makoto calmly declared that he had wanted his team to gain experience fighting a boss of this level, but now he would finish it himself. Hearing this, the team quickly erected a protective barrier around themselves. Once the barrier was in place, Makoto channeled his red dragon ability into his sword, releasing raging flames in all directions. He then combined it with crimson light, unleashing a massive inferno directly at the boss, obliterating nearly half of her body. Kannagi witnessed this in complete shock. Makoto had used a sword flame technique similar to his own, but it was vastly more powerful. Without the protective barrier, everyone would have been reduced to ashes. Kannagi silently apologized to the boss, saying it was his duty to protect the world. Then, out of nowhere, he meowed like a cat, causing an unbearable wave of second-hand embarrassment among everyone present. Observing the battle closely, Kannagi realized that Makoto's technique was vastly different from Hinoki's. His abilities were truly on another level. Filled with awe, Kannagi now deeply wished to learn from him. Makoto then delivered the final blow, cutting the boss completely in half. However, in an instant, a flash of light crossed the battlefield. Makoto's arm was suddenly severed. In disbelief, he turned around, only to see a massive hole in Dekaro's body. Kannagi looked around frantically, horror overwhelming him as he realized what had just happened. One by one, the bodies of his companions were being torn apart, blood spilling across the ground. Seeing Dekaro collapse, Kannagi ran to help him, but with his last strength, Dekaru pushed him away. Staggering backward, Kannagi stood in disbelief as the comrades he had fought beside moments earlier now fell dead before his eyes. Despite being on the brink of death, Dekaru is filled with regret. His radar failed to detect the approaching attack, leading to this devastating loss. As he falls, he apologizes to his captain and collapses to the ground, hoping that at least his team managed to see where the attack came from. Kashi is safe, but several other members are struck by the same beam, piercing straight through their bodies. Makoto, clutching his severed arm, shouts for his team to take cover in the terrain, identifying it as a skill-based attack. Without hesitation, everyone obeys and runs for their lives. While fleeing, Kashima grabs a fallen companion, urging him to follow. However, the wounded soldier hesitates, worried about the captain, who is critically injured. The attack that severed Makoto's arm cannot be blocked, not even by a barrier, as its properties annihilate everything that touches. Suddenly, another beam heads straight for Makoto, but he narrowly avoids it by leaping into the air. Kashima watches in growing fear as the boss unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks while regenerating simultaneously. Realizing that they must defeat the boss in a single decisive strike, she turns toward Kannagi, finding him kneeling on the ground, frozen in shock. Kannagi stares at his fallen comrades. His voice is barely a whisper as he begs the founder Valentine, asking if she can revive them. However, with an apologetic expression, Valentine says she cannot bring the dead back to life. Kannagi sighs for a moment, then takes a deep breath. He summons all the founders, admitting that although he wanted to handle everything on his own this time, he now realizes he needs their help once again. Without hesitation, Hinoki steps forward and takes control of his body. Meanwhile, Makoto, analyzing the attack, realizes that it completely bypassed Jiru's radar. Since Jiru's radar can only detect threats within 3 kilometers in range, the attack must have originated beyond that distance. This single strike not only killed Dakaru, but also severed Makoto's arm, proof that the hidden enemy is at least as strong as he is. Determined to not let his fallen comrade's sacrifices be in vain, Makoto pushes beyond his current limits, channeling power far greater than his normal capacity. Using his heightened senses, he focuses his energy to locate a point more than 3 kilometers away, despite the obstacles concealing the enemy. Gripping his sword tightly, he remembers those who fell today. Their deaths fuel his resolve. With unwavering determination, Makoto charges his blade with crimson light and unleashes a devastating torrent of fire. The scorching inferno tears across the ground, destroying everything in its path, until it finally reveals the enemy who cast the lethal spell. It is the same boy who arrived alone, dressed in casual clothes. He is impressed that Makoto managed to track him after his attack, as expected of the captain of the strongest squad. However, Makoto is stunned. His attack was completely absorbed by the boy. The boy claims that if Makoto had still had his left arm intact, that attack would have killed him. He is using a spell called Darkness, channeling dark orbs around his body. As he walks toward Makoto, he hurls one of the orbs with lethal intent. In response, Makoto swings his sword, conjuring an ice barrier. He then counterattacks instantly, vanishing and reappearing behind the boy, slashing at his neck. But before Makoto can process what just happened, the same devastating beam strikes again, tearing away part of his torso. The boy remains unharmed, calmly stating that he had anticipated Makoto's attack. He adds that it is Makoto who was truly close to death. Those words ignite Makoto's fury. With the little strength he has left, he charges forward, swinging his sword. The boy easily dodges and counterattacks with a powerful kick, landing directly on Makoto's open wound. However, Makoto is one step ahead. Exploiting the opening, he strikes with the back of his sword, knocking the boy to the ground. As Makoto watches, he grows curious about why the boy stopped using the beam attack after only a few shots. Despite its overwhelming power, it seems he cannot sustain it indefinitely. Makoto realizes that the boy cannot use his spell continuously. In terms of stamina, they are evenly matched. The boy manages to land on his feet, confirming Makoto's suspicion, but he points out that they are not in the same condition. Makoto is clearly at a disadvantage, with an amputated arm and half of his body missing. Even so, Makoto refuses to acknowledge the concept of disadvantage. He recalls the 3 rules of the Makoto squad, drawing strength from them. Determination floods his body as he prepares to fight until his final breath. With unshakable resolve, he channels searing electrical energy, cauterizing his own wounds to stop the bleeding. As he does, he shouts the third rule of the squad across the battlefield: "Overcome your weakness." With those words, he releases the scarlet flame. The boy's eyes narrow. He realizes that Makoto is burning his own life force to amplify his power. In response, he does the same, fueling his darkness spell with his own essence. Makoto, invoking the spirits of his fallen comrades, stares down his opponent. His voice echoes across the battlefield as he warns him not to underestimate his team. Meanwhile, farther back, as Kannagi calls upon his founders for help, his hair turns white when Hinok takes control of his body. The remaining team members who are still retreating are suddenly stopped by the boss, who remains strong while regenerating her arms. Witnessing this, Cash becomes worried, realizing she cannot subdue the boss on her own. She calls out to Kannagi, who is still kneeling in the distance. To her, it seems that his fighting spirit vanished completely after witnessing the deaths of his teammates. That reaction is natural. He was just an ordinary person who had only recently joined the group. However, to her surprise, Kannagi rises from the ground. In the blink of an eye, he rushes forward and delivers a devastating kick to the boss, sending her flying. On the other side of the battlefield, Makoto and his opponent continue their fierce exchange, striking at one another relentlessly. Wielding only half of his sword, Makoto releases the scarlet light. His opponent barely manages to dodge, leaning to the side. Despite avoiding the attack, he grows uneasy. It is becoming harder to keep up. Makoto's flames, which should have been extinguished by the darkness spell, are reigniting and striking him again. Moreover, there is a limit to how much darkness he can manually control, and that limit is rapidly approaching. Realizing this, he unleashes a barrage of dark spheres towards Makoto. Makoto swiftly evades, seizing an opening to charge forward and sever his opponent's arm. Their positions are now reversed. However, despite losing an arm, the opponent lunges forward and drives his knee into Makoto's wounded arm. Makoto collapses to the ground in pain as the opponent slowly approaches. Looking down at him, he declares that losing an arm means nothing. After all, Makoto still has a gaping hole in his stomach. Then he reveals something terrifying. He had anticipated Makoto's strategy from the very beginning. From the first attack, he knew Makoto would choose close-quarters combat. He acknowledges Makoto's strength, admitting that he always makes the best decisions and never wastes time. However, he also points out Makoto's flaw. He is far too predictable. That, he declares, is the reason Makoto will lose. Reaching into his bag, he pulls out a book. Holding it up, he states that Makoto's defeat has already been decided by its contents. Makoto's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the Book of Perdition. The opponent opens the book, revealing a shocking truth. He claims that if there is an organization that exists to prevent prophecies, that it is only natural that another exists to fulfill them. Makoto is stunned to learn that such an organization exists. The opponent then delivers his final revelation. He is one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. He introduces himself as the 12th of darkness, destined to fulfill the prophecy. Makoto, still incredulous, questions the reason for his obsession with destruction. Flipping through the book's pages, the opponent smiles and asks if Makoto would forgive him if he revealed the answer. Makoto is enraged by the mockery. Without hesitation, he swings his sword with all his strength, nearly severing the opponent's shoulder. Makoto is confident that he can still win this battle, as his opponent appears to be running out of mana and his body seems to be reaching its limit. Makoto invokes the red dragon form, convinced that this will secure his victory. On the other hand, the man, despite having his shoulder nearly torn off, remains standing and declares that this is the end for Makoto. With that, he pulls out a potion and drinks it, releasing a dazzling burst of light. The light blinds Makoto, and within that brilliance, a powerful punch slams into Makoto's face, sending him crashing to the ground. When the dust settles, Makoto stares in disbelief. All the damage he inflicted has been completely healed, and his opponent has returned to full strength. The man explains that the potion he used is an artifact capable of fully restoring the body. With only one arm, Makoto uses his scarlet-like blade once more, sending a wave of sword energy towards his opponent. But his opponent disperses it with his dark orbs and counterattacks with a relentless barrage of attacks. Makoto is horrified. The artifact his opponent used should be under national control due to its immense power. No ordinary organization should possess such an item. The man delivers a brutal kick to Makoto's wounded abdominal wound, sending him flying to the ground, where he takes his final breath. Believing he has finally won, the man exhales in relief. Meanwhile, Makoto, recalling his childhood and his fallen comrades, reaches desperately for his sword. He also remembers Kannag's words about treating his brother like his cat, and a faint smile appears on his blood-stained face. With renewed determination, Makoto reaches for his sword, but just as he's about to swing it, a beam of darkness strikes him, severing the hand that was holding the blade completely. With a confident tone, the man bids Makoto his final farewell. Yet, just as he is about to deliver the finishing blow, someone arrives, shattering the crystal behind him. It is Kannagi, supported by all the founders, ready to take revenge on the man who made their disciple cry. Makoto senses Kannagi's presence and initially grows worried, but soon realizes it is not just Kannagi, something else is emanating from him. The opponent also notices the abnormality and the aura radiating from Kannagi. The boy standing before him no longer appears to be a vulnerable target, but rather an existence that will fight back fiercely. Growing uneasy, he warns Kannagi not to move, threatening to kill Makoto if he does. However, as he speaks, his arm is severed in the blink of an eye. The opponent is left stunned, unable to comprehend how it happened so quickly. Meanwhile, Kannagi simply swings his sword from a distance. The force of the strike is so great that it dulls the blade. The founders react in shock, astonished that the blade became blunt after a single swing. The alchemist founder intervenes, transmuting multiple weapons for Kannagi to use in the fight. With pure vengeance in his eyes, Kannagi orders each founder to unleash hell upon the man. At the same time, the man completely regenerates his arm, shocking Hinok. The mage founder explains this as reversion, an ability she never expected a modern awakener to possess. She speculates that the artifact he used is continuously healing his wounds until its effect runs out. As she speaks, Kannagi fires an arrow that strikes the man directly in the head. The man never saw it coming, yet he regenerates the wound instantly. Seeing this, one of the founders asks the mage how they can kill him. She replies that they must kill him repeatedly until he eventually stays dead. The man uses his darkness magic as Kannagi knocks another arrow. When Kannagi releases it, the darkness attempts to intercept the shot, but the arrow pierces straight through, striking the man in the chest and head. The archer founder mocks him, asking if he truly believed he could stop their arrows. The man regenerates once more and counterattacks with a dark sphere. Using the evasive abilities of one of the founders, Kannagi dodges the attack and rushes forward, kicking the man in the face. He then grabs the man's hand and delivers a powerful palm strike to his face. One of the founders realizes that the man cannot use his annihilation beam if his vision is blocked by his own dark orbs, which works to their advantage. Dodging his attacks becomes much easier because of this. Kannagi lands a heavy blow to the man's stomach, knocking him to the ground. The founders wonder how many times they will have to watch the same man die and regenerate. Meanwhile, Kannagi approaches Makoto. In his weakened state, Makoto asks if he is truly Kannagi. Kannagi denies it, explaining that the founders are using his body as heroic spirits. Using Valentine's powers of healing and preservation, Kannagi begins restoring Makoto's arms. As he works, he explains that they are pressed for time and must act quickly. Watching Kannagi leave, Makoto understands that it is the founders who are currently in control. A short distance away, the man rises in shock, unable to believe that his spells are being dodged and countered so easily. Before he has time to think, Kannagi attacks with a spear, piercing straight through his heart. The man is assaulted mercilessly, dying over and over again without a moment to recover. One of the founders asks the mage whether keeping the spear lodged in his heart will prevent regeneration. However, the spear passes through his body and he begins to regenerate yet again. As the man starts recovering, Kannagi delivers a powerful downward kick, slamming him back into the ground. Kannagi wonders which parts of the body regenerate first if the body is completely destroyed. The man begins regenerating from his hand, but when his body is fully restored, he is gasping and exhausted. He is being destroyed repeatedly, yet he refuses to let a mere boy stop him. Deciding to kill Makoto and escape, he charges forward, only to find Kannagi already seated there, guarding Makoto. With a maniacal smile, Kannagi tells him that he is too late. Hinoki then takes control of Kannagi's body and, using his sword style, completely dismembers the man. Although the man is obliterated, he does not fear death, believing he is fulfilling a prophecy. However, his resolve begins to waver in the face of something as terrifying as Kannagi. As the man regenerates yet again, he struggles to remember his mission to fulfill the prophecy, refusing to let fear overcome him. He reaches into his bag for another artifact, but before he can use it, Kannagi severs his arm. The artifact scatters across the ground, creating a powerful golden cage around Kannagi, known as the Sands of Time Cage. The regeneration effect on the man ends, and he is unable to restore his severed arm. Relieved, the man believes he has barely managed to escape. The founders, upon seeing the cage, grow concerned and begin discussing what to do next, as the man's regeneration is nearly exhausted. The man outside the cage declares that not even his darkness can destroy it. As a result, Kannagi cannot kill him while he is trapped inside. With a nervous expression, the man announces that he will leave. However, before he can finish his sentence, Hinoki shouts for him to pay attention. Suddenly, the man senses a powerful aura behind him and turns around to see Makoto standing there, still regenerating. How could Makoto be this confident and powerful? The answer lies in his childhood, when he trained under the greatest awakener, Midori. Even Midori once lost to Makoto in a sword duel, which led him to suggest that Makoto seek an even better master to continue his training. Following the advice of the strongest awakener in the world, Makoto searched for masters worthy of becoming his teachers. However, he surpassed every master he encountered, whether they taught swordsmanship, magic, or agility. All of them gave up on him in less than a month. One of those masters eventually recommended him to the strongest swordsman they knew at the time, Hinoki Itsuka, the younger sister of Hinoki. Itsuka became Makoto's final master, and he trained with her for nearly 3 years. One day, while training together, Makoto asked Itsuka about a sword technique mentioned in a book called Indomitable. Even Itsuka could not fully understand how the technique worked, stating that it was a skill only Hinoki, the founder, could use. Makoto found this fascinating, as he had read about it in the book himself. Eventually, Itsuka realized that she had nothing left to teach Makoto, as he had already mastered Hinoki's one-handed sword style. Makoto still wished to grow stronger, but Itsuka did not know how he could progress further. She compared him to a bud that had yet to bloom, saying that even with all his training, it would be difficult for him to fully bloom in this lifetime. She hoped that one day, a swordsman even stronger than him would appear before him. In the present, Makoto realizes that this very moment is unfolding before his eyes. He notices Kannagi using sword techniques he never even knew existed. According to Itsuka, such an opportunity comes only once in a lifetime, and must not be wasted. Grateful for this chance, Makoto thanks Itsuka and his heart, and brings his severed arms together. Seeing this, all the founders are confused about what he is trying to do. Kannagi is also worried about his captain, who is outside the cage with the enemy. Makoto begins to emit the same aura as Kannagi. Meanwhile, back at the anti-prophecy faction's training grounds, Midori, who is training with Sue, senses an overwhelming aura. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the area. As the dust settles, they are shocked to see a massive hole in the wall, and Midori is gone. Back on the battlefield, the man is confused. Witnessing Makoto perform such a feat despite his condition, he becomes certain of his own defeat. Observing this, Hinoki explains to Kannagi that people are like flowers, blooming into their true potential when they reach their peak, whether physically, spiritually, or by mastering a supreme technique. For Makoto, this is the moment of his true potential. Standing behind Kannagi, Hinoki advises him to engrave everything he is seeing deeply into his memory. Kannagi understands what Hinoki is trying to convey. Like a flower in full bloom, Makoto raises his arms as if holding a sword, and with unshakable resolve, successfully uses the long-lost technique of Hinoki's one-handed sword style, Indomitable, the very technique he once read about in the book. Even though the man's darkness defenses are perfectly activated, his body is cleaved in half, without Makoto wielding a physical sword at all. The man wonders if this is the place and moment where he will meet his end. As his body disintegrates, Hinoki praises Makoto for materializing a sword that had existed only in his mind. Meanwhile, Makoto, though confused, feels that he has finally become the swordsman he always aspired to be. He considers it a blessing to have spent time with his family, friends, comrades, and subordinates. Every experience he had made him stronger. Even if this is the end for him, he remembers his little brother and his cat, apologizing to them in his heart. As he is about to lose consciousness, he sees Kannagi walking toward him, reaching out his hand with a smile. Seeing this, Makoto realizes that death may not be the end, as he can leave his legacy to the next generation through Kannagi. Grasping Kannagi's hand, he gives thanks and collapses to the ground. When the cage disappears after the man's defeat, Kannagi rushes toward his captain, feeling a deep connection through the emblem of nothingness. All their other comrades lie dead on the ground. But just as Makoto is about to join them, Midori comes flying in, catching him just in time as he falls. Makoto dies in Midori's arms at the age of 23, following the battle with the user of darkness. Press F to pay respects. Holding Makoto's body, Midori is overcome with despair, unable to believe what has happened. He recalls a moment when, during training, he once asked Makoto why he chose to become the captain of the squad. According to Midori, within the anti-prophecy unit, Makoto was the second strongest after him, and if Makoto were to use his full potential, no one would be able to rival him. Midori once asked Makoto whether, with all that strength, he believed it would be better to fight alone. The question surprised Makoto, and he asked Midori if he thought he was unsuited for teamwork. However, to Makoto, his team mattered more than anything else. He was unsure how to put those feelings into words, but suddenly his comrades called out to him through the security camera system. The group was lively and excited because one of their teammates, Kazushiro, had just passed the level 2 task he had been working on. Kazushiro himself was overjoyed, saying that Makoto was the first person he wanted to tell. Dikaru, thrilled by the news, suggested that everyone go out to lunch together. Watching their camaraderie, Midori was taken aback. As he listened, Makoto explained that he truly cared for his comrades, and that even if he were to fall wounded in battle, he would be happy knowing his team was fighting beside him. Returning to the present, Midori holds his friend's body and tells him that his wish to fight for his comrades has been fulfilled. Although most of them have fallen, 2 are still alive. Midori, with tears in his eyes, gently closes Makoto's eyes, stating that as a leader, Makoto fulfilled his duty. It was something Midori knows he himself could not have done, yet Makoto did it, and did so with honor. Meanwhile, Kannagi lies on the ground with all the founders standing behind him. Darkness begins to cloud his consciousness, and the mage explains that this is likely because Kannagi has taken all the blame for the destruction of the station, and for his perceived weakness. All the founders have also experienced the loss of comrades, friends, and family. Their hearts were shattered as they watched those dear to them fall. In most cases, like Hinoki, they were never able to overcome those wounded hearts. Hinoki approaches Kannagi, who is kneeling in despair. He calls out to him, but in a broken voice, Kannagi admits that he no longer wants to fight. His heart is in pieces, and he believes that if he had allowed the founders to fight from the beginning, no one would have died. Now he understands that in his attempt to grow strong for others, he became nothing more than a vessel for the founders. Hinaki, hearing Kannagi's words, tries to speak, but Kannagi is overwhelmed by his thoughts. He feels the hand with which he once grasped Makoto's burning within his consciousness like fire. Kannagi knows that Makoto entrusted him with the task of carrying on his legacy. Tears well in the founder's eyes. Then Kannagi says something that shocks all of them. He declares that he now wishes not only to surpass the founders, but to surpass them at every single moment he lives. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light descends on Kannagi as he declares his resolve. From that moment on, he vows never to let anyone die again. His mind is now as strong as 1,000 levels combined. 1 month later, in Nagano province on Mount Make, Su is practicing hand-to-hand combat with Kannagi. He launches blow after blow toward Kannagi, all of which are effortlessly evaded. Kannagi then counterattacks with a piercing strike that Su blocks, but the impact creates a shockwave behind him. Kannagi is stunned by how easily Su redirected the force of his penetration spell. As Kannagi processes this, Su counterattacks, but Kannagi is prepared and uses Ikido to spin Su around. Su attempts an aerial kick, but Kannagi blocks it and responds with a powerful kick of his own. Just as he is about to land the blow, a loud shout interrupts them. It is Itika. How did all of this come to be? The destruction of the squad left a deep scar on the anti-prophecy unit. During the funeral for the fallen, everyone was mourning, but Su stood frozen before his brother's photograph the entire time. Later, when Kannagi was heading to his room, he saw Su leaving Makoto's room carrying several books and a cat. Kannagi recognized the cat as Oribe, which Makoto often talked about. Su was shocked that Kannagi knew about his brother's cat, something even he himself had not known. Before entering his brother's room, Sue was unaware of the cute cat, the books, the clothes, the food, even the thoughts Makoto carried. He only discovered these things while going through Makoto's belongings. Kannagi noticed that Sue was carrying a stack of journals he intended to take with him. These journals had been left by Makoto so that his brother could read them if he ever lost his life. Every day of Makoto's training and every mission was recorded within them. However, Sue noticed something else. Every entry ended with Makoto worrying about Sue. He wrote about how Sue was doing, how cold the weather was, and even about Sue's achievements and life events. Reading the journals alone in his room, Sue collapsed into tears, curling up on the floor as he realized that everything his brother had written was about him. Leave a crying emoji if you are crying too. When Sue shared all of this with Kannagi, Kannagi revealed that Makoto often talked to him about Sue and his cat, Oribe. Hearing this, Sue broke down, declaring that from now on, he wants to grow stronger so that his brother will never have to worry about him from the heavens above. With that, both of them went to train with Rinok and Itika. At first, she was cautious around them, until they revealed that Sao was Makoto's brother, and that Makoto had fallen in battle. This shocked Itika, but she maintained her composure. In unison, both Sao and Kan asked her to train them so they could become stronger. Returning to the present, Itika is impressed by how much both of them have improved, especially Sao, who has progressed remarkably. Kan asks about his own progress, to which Itika responds with an irritated sigh, claiming that she has nothing left to teach Kan since he already knows everything. She jokes that she should be the one asking him to teach her instead. Then she kicks a branch toward both of them, and with a manic smile, declares that she is the sword, challenging them to come at her. With that, both advance toward her, Sao attacking from the front, while Kan attacks from above. As they fight, Kan is determined to grow stronger, and confident that he will become the strongest awakened in the world. Meanwhile, in England, London, a man wearing a hat and coat walks alone through the nighttime streets. As he turns a corner, someone recognizes him as one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, Quatre. Quatre also recognizes the person approaching him. It is Midori. Midori immediately demands that Quatre reveal the location of his base and comrades, warning that if he says anything else, he will die. Hearing this, Quatre instantly summons his weapon, a strange heart-shaped spear, and challenges Midori to face him. Suddenly, an explosion of blood splashes out of the alley, followed by Midori, who emerges unharmed. Outside, other members of the anti-prophecy group are waiting. Midori hands them the book, turns around, and walks away, saying that 7 remain. They now have 5 books, which means they have killed 5 of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, and Midori is heading toward the next target. Inside the Hunt for the Eternal Secrets, the ultra-secret anti-prophecy facility, a book collected by Midori is presented to an elderly woman. She is introduced as I, the superintendent of the anti-prophecy unit. The man who delivers the book confirms that it truly came from Midori, revealing that these are the prophecy books of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. This man is Genin, the superintendent's assistant. Another assistant, an elderly woman named Chike, is also present. She suggests that the books may be part of a single larger book that was dismantled, and opens the book, commenting that eliminating the apostles and recovering the books are not the main problems. The real problem is that Midori is acting on his own, and it seems that Makoto's death left a deep mark on him. Hearing this, Chike wonders what they should do, and I, with a smile, orders them to leave Midori to her, assuring her that when he returns, she will prepare tea for him. Genin then proposes that since Makoto's team was eliminated, leaving a gap in the anti-prophecy unit, they are willing to form a new team under his leadership. Upon hearing this, Ai sinks into thought. Meanwhile, somewhere around Tokyo, a Grade 2 prophecy, the Rebellion, is unfolding. The leader of this prophecy is the God of Down. Members of the anti-prophecy unit are fighting against the prophecy's troops, but they are struggling to defeat even a few of them. Nervous, they call for their captain. Reebok Setsuna. Hibik, the captain of squad Reebok Setsuna, steps forward. To her, the troops are boring and easy to defeat. Then she looks at Khan, who has joined her squad, and asks if she can handle it. Khan uses her spell, Trismistos, creating a massive mass of mercury. She warns everyone to step back as she flows the mercury across the ground toward the troops. Once each soldier's feet are submerged in the mercury, Khan uses her gasification spell, converting the mercury into gas. The troops begin to convulse and suffocate. Khan then converts the gas back into liquid mercury, now inside the troops' bodies. She uses crimson heat to boil the mercury within them, and finally solidifies it, instantly killing all the troops by forming spikes inside their bodies. The entire squad is shocked, as Khan has just eliminated all the troops in a matter of seconds. Khan snaps her fingers and turns to the group, announcing that she is finished. Reebok approaches her, clapping, and praises Khan for using all 3 states of matter and executing 4 attacks in a single ability, which is impressive. She lifts Khan's chin and comments that it is a shame she is only a temporary member of their group. Reebok proposes that once Khan completes her training, she should permanently join their squad. Khan, clearly excited, replies that she will think about it. The other squad members are also impressed by Khan, wondering if she would really join them, considering how cute and strong she is. However, to everyone's surprise, Reebok wants Khan to join because she wants her battles to become even easier. As soon as Khan leaves, she calls Kannagi and informs him that she has completed Lesson 7 on controlling the 3 states of alchemy and asks him to send her the next lesson. Kannagi, who is trying to keep his lunch safe from the cat, readily agrees. Upon hearing this, the founding alchemist is amazed that Kani has finally mastered level 7. Kannagi asks the founder to prepare 3 more lessons for Kani, and he agrees with great satisfaction. Kannagi informs Kani, and she thanks him. She also mentions that Hinata has reached level 8. At Saitama City Hall in the city of Tokorosa, a rank 2 prophecy appears, a land-devouring beast with a sphinx as its leader. Hinata, sent to eliminate the boss, uses his lightning kick and completely destroys the leader with a single strike. With this, he completes his level 8 lesson on the lightning kick. The captain of squad Todoroki praises Hinata and proposes that he join their squad. Hinata, like Khan, wants time to think about which squad he should join. He asks Khan for advice, and she, excited to compete with him, declares that no matter which squad he chooses, she will defeat them. Kannagi, who is on a joint call with both of them, is happy that they are growing stronger and declares that he should get up and begin training. While Kannagi is speaking, Sao becomes irritated because Oribe, the cat, always clings to Kannagi and not to him. He grumbles about it. As he tries to pull the cat away from Kannagi, Kani asks if they have heard the rumor about the formation of a new squad. Kannagi has not heard it, so she explains that a new squad is being formed to fill the gap left by Makoto's squad. The captain of this new squad will be selected from the member with the greatest achievements. Kannagi takes the news lightly, but Kani has something else on her mind. She reveals that the real question is not who becomes captain, but whether Kannagi wants to form his own squad. At first, Kannagi dismisses it as a joke, but then he freezes, realizing the weight of what she is saying. Kannagi asks Kani why she said that. She reveals that there is a certain desire within the anti-prophecy organization, as there is a force in the world capable of eliminating all prophecies. Kannagi is surprised by this revelation, and Kani adds that she also desires such a force. She explains that everyone in the squads is looking for a leader with a strong will, and she believes that Kannagi has the qualities to become a capable squad captain. At that exact moment, the captain of Akma's squad calls her, causing her to apologize to Kannagi and say goodbye. The conversation leaves Kannagi deeply thoughtful about the possibility of becoming a squad captain. Meanwhile, Itika asks Sao about Kannagi, and he reveals the discussion about the possibility of Kannagi becoming a captain. Itika also believes that if Kannagi wants to, he could easily take on the role, and Sao agrees with her. Lost in thought, Kannagi seeks answers from the founders, who seem uncertain about what advice to give him. Since they had all dedicated their lives to following a master, they lack experience in leadership. Founder Mago, realizing this, calls them useless teachers for being unable to guide Kannagi in this situation. Hinok then turns to the founder of military strategy, Ron, and asks for his opinion. Ron, however, refuses to intervene, stating that it is not the right time, as there is already someone qualified to guide Kannagi. Before Kannagi can process this, his thoughts are abruptly interrupted by a wooden spear that strikes the ground just inches from him. Looking up, he sees Itika approaching, urging him not to waste time overthinking, but to continue his training. With a manic smile, she challenges him to use his lightning step against her. Kannagi agrees, leaping from the rock and using lightning step in combination with wave step to land smoothly. Itika watches in astonishment, questioning Kannagi's true identity. To her, the level of skill he has achieved in just 6 months is impossible for a normal awakened. Remembering Hinok's grueling training sessions, during which he failed countless times while learning lightning step, Kannagi lets out a laugh. However, before he can dwell on the memory, he senses an aura of energy surging toward him. Realizing that Itika is charging at him with her wooden staff infused with energy, he dodges quickly. The staff strikes the rock behind him, splitting it cleanly and perfectly in half. Sao, witnessing this, is stunned. Itika, undeterred, reminds Kannagi that she does not care whether he is focused or not, and that she will force him to stay alert. Kannagi, now slightly nervous but fully attentive, maintains his stance. Within him, Hinok realizes that Ron was referring to Itika as the person qualified to guide Kannagi. The founding mage also comes to understand that Itika is remarkably strong for a modern awakened, as expected of Hinok's descendant. However, Hinok denies having children, claiming that she could be his sibling instead. He acknowledges Itika's strength, noting that since she trained someone as powerful as Makoto, she may be a living successor. However, as he says this, he notices her using a technique called Skyfall, something he has never seen before. This technique releases an electric shock toward Kannagi, which he barely manages to evade. Realizing the raw power behind the attack, Kannagi understands that Itika is using everything she has against him. Itika presses forward and continues with her purgatory sword technique, delivering a powerful strike against him. Meanwhile, Hinok watches with great enthusiasm, realizing that Itika has developed a new technique by refining all the knowledge that was passed down to her. On the outside, as Kannagi dodges the attack, Itika is impressed. It is a technique he had never encountered before, yet he still managed to avoid it. She praises Kannagi's one-handed sword style, noting that it closely resembles the techniques of the founder. This comment shocks Kannagi, and before he can respond, Itika adds that he may be worrying about whether he could ever become as strong as Makoto. Kannagi is stunned, as this was exactly what had been weighing on his mind. Sao, hearing this, is also surprised. Kannagi's grip on his sword tightens as he remembers witnessing Makoto's strength firsthand. Makoto was an extraordinary squad captain, and that is precisely why Kannagi continues to question whether he can ever reach Makoto's level. To his surprise, Itika suddenly shouts at him to focus, channeling her energy as she unleashes her sword technique, Tengu Dance, creating a powerful water tornado. She explains that this technique was developed by masters of the past who built on the founder's techniques. Although these techniques may never equal the founder's power due to the immense difference in strength, the masters never stopped trying, gradually drawing closer over time. Hearing this, Kannagi finally understands what she means. Itika then reveals that she does not know exactly how great Captain Makoto truly was, but from what she knew of him, he must have been an incredible leader. She adds that it will not be the same for Kannagi at first, but if he has the ability, he certainly has the potential to reach that level. Pointing her wooden staff at him, she advises Kannagi not to obsess over Makoto, but instead to focus on the path entrusted to him. Hearing this, Kannagi remembers the moment when Makoto held his hand. Thinking back to that moment, he realizes that he must look toward the future instead of clinging to comparisons. A smile appears on Itika's face as she declares that for the sake of that future, she herself will train him. With that, the two engaged in intense training, pushing each other to their limits. 2 weeks later, at Anti-Prophecy headquarters, Ribik and Todorok, two squad captains, review the list of newly recommended squad candidates. The list submitted by the superintendent himself includes Kannagi and Itika. Some members find this selection strange. Meanwhile, outside the headquarters building, a shadowy figure speaks on the phone, informing someone that they have successfully infiltrated the facility and the examination for the new squad captain will take place in 3 days. This figure carries the Book of Perdition and boldly declares that she will soon become the new squad leader of the Anti-Prophecy organization. This figure is none other than Ava, one of the 12 apostles of the Apocalypse. Ava has the ability called Celestial Demon, which allows her to replace the existence of anyone she kills. Her goal is to become the captain of the newly formed Anti-Prophecy Squad and destroy the organization from the inside. As Midori continues his wave of assassinations against the 12 apostles, more than half of them have already fallen. Unable to defeat Midori directly, the remaining apostles decide to sabotage the Anti-Prophecy organization from the inside. Their creed is that they will do anything to fulfill the prophecy. 3 days later, at the Anti-Prophecy's grand training field, the selection exam for the new squad captain begins. As all the participants gather, the instructor announces that there will be 4 tests, with only 4 people advancing to the final stage. The exam follows a points-based system. First place in each test earns 3 points, second place earns 2 points, and third place earns 1 point. In the end, the candidate with the highest total score will be chosen as the captain of the newly formed squad. The superintendent watches as the instructor urges all participants to give their best. In unison, they shout, "Yes." Among them, Kannagi feels the weight of everyone's gaze. There are 8 candidates: Koke from Squad Yagarama, Akina from Squad Urasoya, Sonobi from Squad Yashima, Risag from Squad Kakabi, Sakazak from Squad Tarazak, Shikami from Squad Todorok, and Diru from Squad Hibiki. However, the true danger lies in the fact that one of them is actually Ava, one of the 12 apostles of the Apocalypse, an imposter hiding in plain sight. And then there is the special recommendation, Kannagi. Unlike the others, Kannagi stands alone, as his squad captain Itika is nowhere to be found, oversleeping as usual. Still, she sends him a message warning him that if he does not win, she will personally make him regret it. Determined to avoid elimination before Itika arrives, Kannagi steels himself and prepares for the competition. Meanwhile, Itika races toward the training field while riding on Suo's back. She shouts for him to go faster, knowing that if they don't hurry, they might miss crucial moments. She has complete faith that Kannagi will win and refuses to miss his victory. Back at the training field, the first test begins, mana measurement. To everyone's shock, Kannagi releases an immense amount of energy, shattering the measuring device and securing first place. Arena from Squad Yorosoya, who placed 5th in the test, is stunned by Kannagi's overwhelming power. Sakazak takes 3rd place, while Shinobu secures 2nd. Both of them realize that Kannagi is an anomaly. Sakazak comments that such irregularities occasionally occur when a genius appears during the examination, whether in physical strength or mana. He speculates that Kannagi is a mana prodigy, much like another participant, Shikami, who placed 7th. On the scoreboard, Kannagi takes the lead with 3 points. As the instructor announces the second test, hand-to-hand combat, the real battle begins. Each participant must face an opponent, and a victory will earn 2 points. As soon as the instructor announces the first match, Shikami raises his hand voluntarily, requesting to face Kannagi. Shikami is the strongest regular member in hand-to-hand combat, and is also considered an irregular. When Shikami was only 2 years old, he was caught in a monster outbreak from another dimension. Despite being a baby in a stroller, he single-handedly killed all the monsters, shocking even his own mother. He protected her and became a legend. In the stands, Ribik accuses Todorok of cheating by sending Shikami into the hand-to-hand combat test. Todorok argues that there is nothing wrong with choosing his strongest member, since Shikami is blessed with magical talent and immense physical strength. He boasts that he has trained Shikami since the day he joined his squad, and that, to this day, no one has ever defeated him in close combat. Hearing this, Ribik wonders if the match will end instantly, given that Shikami's combat abilities are practically unbeatable. As soon as the fight begins, Shikami approaches Kannagi and asks if he really has been teaching Renata. Remembering the founders, Kannagi replies that he is merely a messenger. Shikami does not understand what he means, but continues, claiming that someone out there is advising and teaching Renata, who is already a super genius. He adds that even without Kannagi's guidance, Renata will surpass her current level on her own. Rather than argue, Kannagi simply agrees, which only irritates Shikami further. Enraged, Shikami activates Violent Bite, transforming into a monstrous form. In an instant, moving at blinding speed, he lunges at Kannagi. Kannagi ducks just in time, but Shikami follows up with a powerful claw attack. Watching this, Todoroki is thrilled to see his fighter giving it his all. As Shikami swings with full force, Kannagi evades the attack. Seizing the moment, Kannagi assumes the kudo stance, grabs Shikami's wrist, and hurls him into the ground with tremendous force. The impact erupts into a massive shockwave, sending rocks flying across the field and frightening everyone. As the debris settles, both Kannagi and Shikami are airborne. The other participants are in awe. Although Kannagi merely redirected Shikami's attack, his raw strength alone was enough to devastate the entire battlefield. Even Kannagi himself is impressed by Shikami's strength, though Shikami assumes he is being sarcastic. Despite the devastating blow, Shikami lands safely on the ground, shocking everyone by managing to do so despite the destroyed terrain. Kirina, analyzing the situation on her laptop, comments that this outcome was inevitable. Shikami's physical enhancement is irregular, and the durability of his body far surpasses that of a normal awakened. Regaining his composure, Shikami charges at Kannagi once more. Kannagi realizes that simply countering Shikami's blows will not be enough to win. He needs to try something different. Activating his founder's power, he delivers a light kick to the charging Shikami. Then he multiplies the attack using the penetration technique, Luminance Kick, striking Shikami multiple times while he is still airborne. Everyone watches in shock as Shikami crashes to the ground, defeated. The instructor quickly intervenes, stopping the match before it can escalate further, and declares Kannagi the winner, awarding him 2 additional points. The other squad members are astonished. This man has just physically overpowered Shikami, despite earlier claims by Akihina that Shikami was an irregular. Akirina, now typing furiously on his laptop, had not expected Kannagi to be so exceptional in hand-to-hand combat. He had initially assumed that Kannagi would be naturally eliminated if left alone, but it is now clear that Kannagi is becoming an obstacle to his plans. As Shikami regains consciousness and opens his eyes, he is shocked to see Kannagi casting some kind of spell on him while he lies on the ground. Kannagi reassures him, saying that he is healing his injuries, which only surprises Shikami even more. An irregular in both mana and physical prowess, now capable of healing, it seems almost unbelievable. Shikami, still processing what is happening, asks Kannagi if there is anything he cannot do. This question makes Kannagi recall the time that he desperately tried to bring back the fallen members of Makoto's squad, but failed. After healing Shikami for a while, Kannagi tells him that he should be able to stand now. As they talk, a loud crash suddenly echoes nearby. Kannagi looks over and realizes that it marks the final match of the hand-to-hand combat exam. Shikami, now alarmed, wonders how long he has been unconscious. Realizing it must have been quite some time, Kannagi casually tells him it was only 5 minutes. According to Kannagi, after their fight, the other battles began simultaneously. 2 of the matchups ended instantly, but Kirina and Risag are still fighting even after 5 minutes. Both remain determined, exchanging a relentless barrage of full-strength blows. As Risag charges at Kirina, she knocks him back with a powerful strike, mocking him for lacking special abilities. She taunts him, saying that without unique skills or traits, he is unfit to be a captain. Kirina steadies himself and responds to her remark, stating that he is not the type who seeks to stand out. According to him, even if an ordinary person were to take the role of captain, death would be the only outcome. He believes that a captain must have the ability to adapt to any situation in order to increase the survival chances of every squad member, even if only 1%. Kirina declares that this is his goal, ensuring that his squad will not suffer the same fate as Makoto's squad. This statement strikes Kannagi deeply, as it refers to his fallen comrades in such a way. Shikami is also offended and warns Kirina to choose his words carefully. Returning to the fight, Risag executes her disciplined chainsword technique, generating a vortex of energy as she charges directly at Kirina. Although Kurina blocks the attack, the sheer force sends Kurina crashing to the ground. Risog quickly follows up with another strike, but just as she is about to land it, Kurina unexpectedly surrenders. The instructor immediately stops the match and declares Risog the winner, leaving her in shock. Another squad member quickly restrains her as she seethes with anger, furious that Kurina gave up so easily instead of putting up a real fight. Kurina, on the other hand, states that he expected the battle to last longer, so he chose to conserve his energy for the upcoming tests. As he walks away, he knows that he could have defeated Risog if he had tried, but he doesn't want to reveal his full strength yet, especially with Kannagi nearby. The second stage of the hand-to-hand combat exam ends with Kannagi leading the scoreboard with 5 points, followed by Tsunobu with 3. The instructor announces a 30-minute break before the start of the third evaluation. He also reveals that in the next round, the 4 participants with the lowest scores will be eliminated. As the lunch break begins, Kannagi wonders about Itika and Suo, who should have been there by now but are still missing. Meanwhile, outside the anti-prophecy headquarters building, Suo finally arrives carrying Itika. Exhausted from the effort, he's confused when she heads towards the courtyard instead of the training field. When he questions her, Itika reveals that she can smell lingering traces of an aura, one that suggests someone died there recently. According to her, it seems to be the residue of an awakened who was killed by an overwhelmingly powerful monster. Hearing this, Sue is shocked. If an awakened was truly killed here, it means that someone may have infiltrated the anti-prophecy headquarters, despite it being such a secret location. Ichika argues that the 12 apostles are strong enough to discover how to find this place, which shocks Sue even more deeply. When he asks about the possible motive, she ignores the question and instead suggests that they head to the training grounds. In her mind, however, she knows that the one who died was likely at the level of a squad captain, a figure of great importance. But with no official reports of such an incident, the situation becomes even more intriguing. Now, not only Midori, but also Itika, Sue, and most notably Kannagi are all moving toward the same goal, avenging the death of Captain Makoto. During the lunch break, as everyone tends to their wounds, eats their meals, and chats casually, Kurina sits alone, focused on his laptop. Meanwhile, Kannagi, who is seated with Shikami, brightens when he notices the arrival of his comrades, Ikika and Sue. The atmosphere shifts as others grow nervous upon recognizing Itika, one of the 5 elite members of the Anti-Prophecy Special Task Force, alongside Midori. Watching the captains gathered together, many of them feel deeply uneasy. Itika had stated that a captain had been killed, yet all 7 captains were present at the training field. Hearing this, Itika smiles and calls Kannagi over to share something important. She tells him everything, shocking him with the revelation that one of the captains may, in fact, be a disguised member of the 12 apostles. According to Itika, the probability is high, based on the aura residue she sensed in the courtyard. The individual who died was undoubtedly at the level of a captain. However, since all the captains are present, the situation becomes extremely suspicious. Logically, this should be impossible, but if someone has taken the victim's place, then there is an imposter among them. Realizing the potential danger, Kannagi grows tense, and Sue fully agrees. The person who has just killed a captain-level individual is among them. Sue fears that if they do not resolve this problem soon, there may be more victims. If they leave things as they are, there is a possibility that a prophecy could be fulfilled, leading to human extinction, something truly horrific. Itika, wearing a sinister smile, suggests a far more ruthless approach, killing everyone present to eliminate the threat completely. Sue and Kannagi immediately oppose the idea, arguing that they only need to find and eliminate the single member of the 12 apostles lurking among them. Itika, now excited, points out that if they are dealing with the 12 apostles, this may be their chance to avenge Makoto. After all, they are unquestionably the true ones responsible for his death. She asks Kannagi if he feels the same way. As Kannagi recalls what happened to Makoto and his squad, he confirms that he does. Sue, clenching his fists tightly, also remembers everything that happened to his brother. Kannagi then turns to Azure, the founders of the detectives, to ask for his opinion. Azure suggests that they should first examine the crime scene, but given that they are in the middle of an exam, he knows this is not truly possible. Kannagi considers rushing there, since there is still some time left before the lunch break ends. However, Ezer warns that doing so could alert the culprit. If the apostle they are dealing with is as strong as the one they faced on the snowy mountain, that individual could easily annihilate everyone here if they wished. They need to be prepared in case that happens. Taking this into account, Kannagi decides to go to the training grounds after today's test, but asks whether it is possible that not even the founders could detect any aura residue at the crime scene. Hinoki then reveals that they had been near a volcano in the past month, where he trained and mastered his one-handed sword technique.